I'm going to call the Finance Committee meeting to session. It is April the 12th, so we'll take a quick roll call. Amy?
Here.
Peter?
Here.
Paula?
Here.
Mike Fiore won't be with us tonight. He can't make it. Bill?
Here.
Aaron?
Here.
Kevin?
Here.
Zach?
Here.
And Bonnie. Bonnie? Okay.
All right. I will also take this opportunity to call to order the Select Board meeting for Monday, April 12th. Let the record show that all 5 members are present, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Christine DeVoe to her first official Select Board meeting, which is very special because it's a joint meeting with our friends from FinCom and quite a few folks on school committee. So Christine, welcome and congratulations.
Thank you.
Christine, I'll ditto that. Welcome and congratulations.
Thank you. Excited to be here.
Excellent. And I just want to start the meeting. I don't know if everyone realizes it on the Finance Committee, but Rick Dorney ran for the Board of Assessors and was elected, so congratulations to him. Unfortunately, what that means is he has to resign from the Finance. So Rick did write a letter of resignation that I'll just read really quick. He wrote it to Walter. Please accept my resignation serving as a member of the Norton Finance Committee effective today, Monday, April the 12th. 2021. My 9 years on the committee allowed me to work alongside professional and best-intentioned neighbors wanting to serve first and foremost in the town's interest. Hopefully in my new role as a Board of Assessor member, I will continue to learn and experience the same outcome. Sincerely, Richard Dorney. And I wish Rick all the best in his new role. He was a valued member of the Finance Committee for a long time.
Thank you, Steve.
Oh, welcome. Attaboy, Rick. Congratulations.
Just jumped on. Thank you.
Congratulations, Rick. Congrats,
Thanks.
Rick.
It was great serving with everyone, and it'll all wish everyone the best, and the Finance Committee's in good hands with all the members. So, again, great being and serving with everyone, and thanks again.
No, it was a pleasure, Rick. Best of luck. And did I hear me? Okay, I thought I did. All right. So with that said, I know Mike.
She is on, Steve. She's on. Yeah, Bonnie's on.
Okay. All right, thank you. So let the record show that Bonnie is here.
Translate.
And I guess I'll fade out as just a regular town member.
Luck, Rick.
All the best and peace with all. Bye-bye.
Same to you.
So I'd like to get the meeting started. I know we had Dr. Baeta will go on first. So Mike, unless you have anything, I'll just let Dr. Baeta start. One of the things I will start out with, as you know, we posed some questions to the school and the school committee that Matt did send responses today. I did not expect everyone to read those today. If you did, that's great. But if you have additional questions going forward, let's send those to myself or Amy so we can consolidate those in one list so we can get more responses from the school committee. But we did want to have Dr. Baeta. Dr. Baeta, thank you for coming tonight. There was some questions last week as far as the school budget. So I will let you start with your presentation at this point.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, and congratulations to Ms. DeVoe and Rick. Many years of good health to you and yours for your work during my last 8 years the 8 years that I've been here. You've been on the FinCom, and we've had a great working relationship. So thank you. I am tonight really going to try to delve in a little bit into some of the general questions that we provided around a 35-page document that we forwarded to the FinCom. And like Steve said, I don't expect that everybody has read it. We had some interpretation questions that we wanted to get, and it took a little longer on our side. We also sent you a multi-page by position and department salaries, including all stipends, vacation pays, and all of that. So you have those for that from us as part of the 25-page document there. So those account for our FY21 pays, if you will, within the budget. You've also been hearing a lot about ESSA 3, and when those funds are coming in, we're somewhere, I believe, between town side and school side, probably upwards of $3 million. And there's already talk about ESSA 4, or the Biden budget being called ESSA 4, because there's some significant funds, mostly around poverty and support of communities with high free and reduced lunch and poverty, which isn't necessarily us, as you know, but it would, whatever that means in terms of numbers, will it be forced, will it be targeted towards more of the cities and the suburbs? We just don't know that yet. It looks like it's going to be clean around Title I. It could double Title I, but again, that is a supplemental requirement and not supplant requirement. In other words, you can't use that money to cover something else. You got to go above and beyond what you're doing for those students. So usually that's staff hiring. So that's going to be something we have to talk about long term for a number of different reasons. There is an impact on the town budget as well because of potential healthcare costs. Roughly, I'm going to use 1.6 million. I'm drafting or estimating, I should say, the ESSA 3 funds, which have not yet been received by Norton Public Schools. DESE is still working through how those funds are going to come out. Those funds have very specific earmarks around 20% for recovery and acceleration of students' learning, and then another 10% around mental health. So you've got 30% of the money already being allocated specifically for supporting direct services to students. Again, I have some serious issues about putting a lot of people into those funds because I think the cliff is getting bigger and bigger every day with these federal funds, while, as we all know, we maintain our taxes in Massachusetts at 2.5%. So that's going to be hard long term if we don't have some type of planning, and I'm sure that's going on Mike's side as well. When we looked at our budget and requested 5.5%, we were already utilizing $1.7 million in school choice and $721,000 in ESSA 2 funds. It looks from the discussions you folks had last week that right now we're working towards a budget that's closer to 2.19 or 2.2. I think we round about, so 2.2. So that means we basically from using a number like 3%, that's another $250,000 from our current operating budget that we have to find for FY22. There's also some cost savings potentially. As you know, we're on a healthcare holiday for the town. That's going to be a pretty significant savings. I'm sure that Mike and the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen have some thoughts on what should happen with those funds in terms of after they become free cash. At this rate, our budget would anticipate that for the October town meeting, we're going to have to be around $500,000 in order to keep ourselves balanced. Now, the biggest issue that we have here is we're hearing a lot of different information from the Commonwealth around what September will look like. What we know for a fact is that there's a push for an all-in return. In other words, full in-person education. However, we're also hearing that districts should prepare for students who are going to stay home because of family or individual medical issues. We don't know how that is going to be formulated. In other words, we don't know if that's going to be something where we can ask for medical documentation. In most cases, we know the students that have medical issues in our district because we may already be providing some type of support services, or we may just know through the school nurse that somebody has an allergy and we have to keep an EpiPen on site and so on and so forth. So if the state forces us to open public schools within a traditional normal return and includes this other option, that's zero budgets in everybody's budget throughout the state. And there will be, right now, there will be no extra funds allocated to communities regardless of where you are. It's not in the game, if you will, coming from the feds or coming from the state, that if you have 50 kids, you have to educate them. And it might be that you have to do it via the DLA option of all at home students. Added to that is the real concern that we have around being able to provide the best services of not having students in school, recognizing that there's always individual situations. But what licenses do those teachers have to have? Is it a waiver license? Can I have an English teacher also teach math? I mean, these are the types of things we just don't know what's going to happen. The school committee is receiving from my office on Thursday what they call basically a virtual academy program that a school district can start up by themselves. No extra funding coming. Or you could do it with another district. Also no extra funding coming. So if we wanted to have a DLA with Mansfield Public Schools, we can file and get that, but there is no funding that's coming with that. So you need extra people to be able to do that. So where is the funding? So that's going to be a concern if we go. Right now, I'm not recommending that we do it, but I think we have to take a look at the 275 students that we have in DLA right now, still for the rest of this year, and figure out what the potential is there, because you can't just lose 275 students from one year to the other, and with a potential cost that comes back to you. In other words, they choice out. If you choice out into a virtual academy, that is school choice funds plus. It's a minimum of $8,600 at TECA, which is the biggest one statewide, and then MAVA, which is out in Greenfield. So that's money that follows the student. So not only you're losing the body, but you're also now getting an extra bill. So we want to be very careful about that approach. And that's just not an issue. That's an actual statewide issue that a lot of us are asking for further details. A couple of the things that I think are important in terms of some of the questions that were asked, I think it's a couple of different things. Number one is, as you know, our budget is such more fluid than the town side is, just because of the way the regulations are done. That doesn't mean that we don't follow the money from where it's coming in and where it's paying out, because we're still required to do that. And you will see that our accounting results from the third-party accountant for the town that does both the town side and the school side has us a continuation of being clean. I think this year there was a question that was made about the accountability of the ESSER 1, 2, and 3 money, and making sure that it's chartered and so on and so forth, because I think that's going to be part of the accounting system in the near future. There'll be some type of generalization, if you will, general big line. I don't think they'll be looking at individual lines for those, because they were put into everything related to COVID-19. And then some of those rules, as you know, have changed, where it's expanded or it's declined in what can be used for those funds. Lastly, if you wanted to ask anything around COVID-19, we're in a good place when it comes to PPEs right now. I can't tell you how much support we've received from specifically the police department and fire department. Our fire chief has provided us with the KN95 masks, at going through that process. So that's been a huge help. We tried to help out early on with the sanitation stuff that they didn't have, that we already had with the guns that do you've seen them all over the place, that do the cleaning, utilizing the mist. So it's been a great collaborative trying to work through all of that. And our SROs have never been busier. I'll leave you with that. They are absolutely dealing with an increase of families in situations where students aren't coming to school at all. And we're trying to, if you will, attack it from as many different perspectives, not only the social emotional, but also the potential courts as a way to support families. And again, this is not to get people in trouble. It's more about reminding people that kids do have to come to school, and that not coming to school isn't really a choice unless you decided to homeschool your child until the age of 16. And that's an option that you do have. But if you're a registered student, you have to be attending school on a regular basis. So that's the big picture, if you will. And I know, Steve, there's probably other questions or comments that people want me to get into, and I'm happy to do so.
Sure, thank you, Dr. Bayetta. I'll take anyone from the Finance Committee at this point with any questions for Dr. Bayetta. Feel free to ask those right now. Okay. Dr. Bayetta, you were really efficient. There's no questions.
Doubt that.
Yeah. Couple of things just from my perspective. One, could you give us what the enrollment differential is from last year to this year? And
Yeah, so
I'm assuming it's gone down. And then what would the what would the maximum be for each school? Like what availability is potentially there in schools right now from a student perspective?
So our biggest hit in enrollment is kind of interesting. Our biggest hit is we doubled the number of students on school choice, roughly around 21, 22 every year. Now we're up at 30s, 40s, if I remember correctly from an earlier report this year. But the biggest hit for us is actually totally related. That's a COVID-related situation. The other COVID-related situation is preschool. If you remember, we have a mandatory preschool requirement within the Commonwealth for students who have special education service deliveries that are needed throughout their preschool. That starts with a student being able to come into the school district at 3 years of age, 2.9 actually, we start the transfer. And those students can receive up to those 2 years before kindergarten of direct services. With that, the model is to have a tuition charge for peer students who don't need those services, but act as, if you will, model students, quote unquote. I hate using those words because I don't think any of us are models, but good students who don't need necessarily social emotional supports and or academic supports in general. That's our biggest hit this year. That was down as of the October 1 numbers, over 40 students. So when you see that combination, we actually are at 2,000. It's in your packet as well, but I know you haven't had a chance, but when you're looking at the numbers, we gave you the last 5 years of the data for Norton Public Schools, and then we also gave it to you. So my school, remember, it's based on October 1 numbers. So as an example, you have the Yale. I'll just use the Yale at 382 students, then at 395, at 373. So as you can see, they're roughly within X number of bodies within that school. What we normally do is, if we have a class that has 100 students and we had 4 teachers, at the early grades we might want to have 5 teachers. We might want to cap those classes at 20 and not 25 with 4 teachers. So what we've typically have done is we've taken the teacher where the enrollment is lower in another grade, cut that teacher from that grade, but added that teacher to the next grade where the class size is. You'll see a lot of that laid out in our enrollment at elementary level. When you look at the high school and middle school, it's very geared towards the subjects that are being taught. So over the last 5 years, we have cut 11 general education teachers. In other words, within elementary level, within middle school and high school, with most of them in K-8 the last couple of years, we're down 11. But on the other side, just in the last couple of years, we've hired 10 paraprofessionals in special education. We've hired 4 special ed teachers. We added a psychologist this year to the budget. We added an adjustment counselor 2 years ago, all because of the delivery service for students. So because you lose some students here, we might be able to do one of 2 things. Move it to another department because of service delivery. So somebody retires in X department, that position may be filled, or that position may be moved. Where there's, and they may not be the same person. So if you're an occupational therapist or a speech therapist, that's an easy move. You can do elementary, you can do secondary. But when you're looking at middle school cuts, those people, and which we did last year, I mean, we had a 9-year veteran and an 11-year veteran lose their jobs last year at the middle school because of the way the licenses play out. Now, we also had FMLAs this year, so we were able to recall those teachers back into their teaching duties for this current year. And again, that was basically the luck of the draw. When you look at the last, well, it would be 13 years, we've lost over 30 general education positions in the district. 30. Now, when you go break even, you also know that we now have 21 specialized programs in the district. When I started, we had 14. So kudos to my predecessors for having 14, but we've added 7 more different areas and about to utilize another program at the LGN, I believe, next year. So, and those decisions are based on A, the philosophy that we educate our own, and B, we take a look at cost. And as you all know, 1 out of district placement to a collaborative at 50 to 55,000 plus transportation, or to a private 80,000 to X plus transportation, can easily destroy our budget. And you know that we've had years that that's happened. If you remember 2 fiscal years ago, we were running an $800,000 deficit in special education when we had 7 different students coming, 3 of which came from out of state, and moved to Norton, and we bore the cost of those tuitions, not knowing on May, whatever it was, at town meeting, that these students were going to be enrolled. They enrolled during the summer. I think one was in June and everybody else was in July and August. So some of it, of the fluidity of the enrollment, we just can't really control. I will tell you that what's called a churn, the percentage of students leaving and percentage of students coming in is starting to get tighter. We went through a period where you had more out than you had in. Now you're starting to see a little bit of the reverse, especially at the elementary level. And we don't know if COVID is going to mean increases in birth rates or decreases in birth rates, but we do know that something's going to happen on the one extreme or the other.
Thank you. So if the trend continues with the declining enrollment, potentially, how many years would it be before there's availability in any of the schools to maybe downsize or close a building, or is that even remotely possible in the next?
Yeah, so as you know, a few years back, we were asked to take a look at reconfiguring our schools, and because everybody thinks we just have a ton of space, not recognizing the programming that we're providing. And at the end of the day, it comes down to, we will go through that process again. It's what we said, I think it was 4 years ago now, maybe 3 years ago, I can't remember the dates, but we will go through that process of looking at the best way to educate students in terms of the schools. As you know, we have a non-traditional model because we have a pre-K3, a K3, and then we move 4-5, then we move 6-8, then we move 9-12. There's a lot of discussions that take place around K-5s with 6-8s and 9-12s. There are 5-8 middle schools in the area. Foxborough has a very successful one. It's really going to depend on where's the space and what's the best accountability. If you're gonna just shut down a school for the sake of shutting down the school, you better be right in that recommendation. As you know, some school districts shut down a school, and then we all know what happens years later. They don't have the space. So that would be a consideration, but we'll go through that entire process like we did once before, at least in my time here.
Okay. And just with what we have now is the way the budgets are working with some of the expenses that we allocated last year in the FY21 budget that aren't being expensed, let's say travel, conferences, conventions. We expect any kind of savings or turnbacks potentially at the end of the year, or
I would say, if any, it would be limited, and let's get into that a little bit, because I think it's important at this stage. A couple of different things that come into play. Remember, for example, transportation costs maintained at 5 days a week, but kids were only taking it twice a week. On 1 day a week, we were providing delivery of food services Mondays, and then kids would take it either Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Friday. That didn't change the contract, because within those buses, we had 1 student per seat mandated. Because if I think, Steve, I shared this with you before, Matt and I were salivating around saving money in transportation this year in the summertime, and then when the regulations came out, or the guidelines came out about how many students can be on a bus, what needs to happen with cleaning the buses in between every single run, and so on and so forth. And then we went from $350 charge to $133 charge, I think it was. We still have a bill. We still had to move money within our budget to still pay the SIM $1 million. We were just collecting less money from users. So the money has to come out of other areas or other potentials. And in most cases, it would be any of those, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 line items. For example, I have travel in my contract. I didn't use any travel in this fiscal year that I can even think of. I don't get any special stipend for driving my car or anything. I just get it if I put in for mileage and I'm out of state or out of town. None of that stuff is traditionally at the rate that it would have been. I was using myself as an example. Athletic fees, another one where we had less participation in terms of games that student played. We cut down the cost to that as well. I think it was $200 every season, and the spring season is going to be discussed Thursday night. And again, we still have the same expenses in terms of contractual obligations, in terms of all in the transportation. I'll give you an example. The transportation has taken us for a loop in some ways, because you can't transport, in some cases, the entire team on one bus. Now, recently, they changed those requirements. They basically moved the goalpost. Again, money from collecting the fees or within those line items. It has to come from somewhere else within our budget. As I said before, when we went into COVID, the number one issue coming out of the state for public education was, please don't unemploy people. You heard me say it last spring, that we were not ordered, but basically told, don't create more unemployment. You know what your budget is, use your budget to keep people working in terms of COVID and buildings closed and people at home. Transportation is a headache. It's a constant headache. We have a very good vendor that we work with. We've been very pleased with the collaborative effort between the two sides. And he's been able to provide us the service that we needed, but it comes at the regular cost. So that's where we're at with that example of transportation.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else on the Finance Committee have any questions for Dr. Bayet at this point?
I do. Well, I don't know if my question is for Dr. Baeta or for Mike or for Jack. But in your email from Friday, Joe, you said that you need to be at 2.5 going into town meeting. And then you'll come back for more of the 5.5 in the fall. So I guess my question to the world at large is, how do we get there? Because we are not there right now.
I think we still have time. We're expecting the House to come out with their budget by the 14th. So hopefully with what they're seeing, anticipation of federal stimulus funds, I'm hoping that they'll increase some of the state aid. So that's one option. And we're also looking at the guidelines on how we can use the federal funds to supplant lost revenue due to anticipated cuts because of the COVID on restaurants and the service industry. So we still have time to hopefully get a better handle on some more funds from those two sources. And then, as Joe said, in the fall, we'll have to look at budgets again.
Mike's comment, which I totally support. I think the biggest issue is that we're just making this a bigger whole, and my concern is to tighten that as much as possible, because I don't want to hear later that, you know, we knew we didn't do X, Y, and Z. We have our budget at 2.19. It doesn't meet our mandated budget within our budget at this time. So that's my biggest headache. We can push off tuitions and transportation payments, but everybody has got to recognize that if we're doing that, it's because we're agreeing that that's the best way to go, or else I'll have to make some type of cuts now before town meeting, or in preparation for town meeting. Usually town meeting votes, then I make the cuts, because I need to know how much money I actually have.
Yeah, I would anticipate that we will be able to meet that 2.5.
Mike, do you know what Mike or Joe, do you know what that number is between the 2.19 and the 2.5? Do you guys know what that is?
$94,816.
Between friends, right?
So Mike, where would that additional $94,000 be coming from? Is that through more state aid than is currently projected, or are we going to have to balance some different lines?
Hopefully it's going to come from more state aid, and then the direction on how we can use the federal stimulus funds to replace the cuts that we anticipated in some of the revenue sources.
Hey, Jack, I just comment on that too, that I think it's really important, since everybody that makes the important decisions as elected officials is on. I think it's really important that once Mike knows his federal stimulus money and I know mine, that we have some really difficult conversations about what to do with those funds over the next 3 years. You know, it's almost becoming like a free cash situation where every year we say the same thing, and Mike reminds me of that, and members of the FinCom remind me of that every year, that we can only go back. I'm on year 8 of the devil showing up on free cash. I'm going for 5 more, for the record. But I think if we can try to figure out a way, there's a lot of rumors going on, and also good ideas of at least discussing things like moving some of those funds for XYZ together, school department and town. Because if town gets 1.9 and we get 1.6, let's say, that's $3.5 million over the next 3 fiscal years, if those numbers are accurate. And with free cash and revenues and, like I said earlier, ESSA4, the Biden budget, as it was called today by one news station, if it has the kind of money in education, we could actually be okay in some areas as long as we can't supplant. That's the big one, especially with Title I. But I just, I kind of look at this as, maybe I'm wrong, you guys can correct me, I kind of look at this as grant money. You can't just put all of it in one basket. I think you have to say, if I use X number this year, then I got to remind myself that at least a third of that needs to come out of somewhere else the following year. A third, or half and half, or a quarter. And I use the example of full day kindergarten, which I know is controversial, but that $150,000 that was moved from school choice to allow for the other $150,000 that remained in the budget ended up being our startup. And then we moved, I believe it was $89,000 the following year into the operating budget, and then another $70,000 or so the second year. So we absorbed it in a way where it wasn't a big, huge 6-figure amount. It was smaller chunks of money. And again, those are for the elected officials to decide.
Steve, Mr. Evans, may I ask a question?
Sure, Michael, too.
So I guess, Joe, I think you just touched upon it, which really, really scares me. And I know we live in the now, not in the future. By using this year's school choice money and next year's school choice money, we're all in, right? This is, as I'm looking at your budget, you supposedly have 8.5 new positions. 5 of them are mandated that we just keep kicking down the road. We came in at, originally your budget was 5.5. Mike said we'll try for 3. It ended up landing at 2.19.
Yeah, I think.
Am I missing something? Next year, 23 looks like we're going to fall off the cliff.
So 23 is the biggest fiscal concern in statewide. It's just not a Norton issue. It might be a bigger hole for Norton, but it's a statewide hole. Everybody's got the same problem. Unless you have huge stabilization accounts like some communities have of $8 and $9 million, and there's far and few between of those. The question will be, if you want to stay away from that cliff as much as possible, then any of these funds that we're thinking of, we need to really think outside the. On my side, at one-time costs. Now, we already know that 30% of it is detailed to recovery, acceleration, and mental health. Okay. That's either paying tutors or hiring somebody. That's what it's going to be. It is what it is. But if we had any luck of the draw here, if we can maintain the one-time purchases only, whatever that may be for the town side or the school side, that to me is a better approach for these funds. There are school systems that have they're getting $11 million potentially, and they're going to spend $5 million on HVAC systems in their schools. That one time, don't have to borrow. We're just going to use those funds for that. We have other school systems that are bringing back class sizes at 20-1 across the district in K-8 as a way to target some of the positives of the hybrid model, which was when you don't have 23 kids in front of you, you only have 10, 11, or 12, you can get a lot more done during the face-to-face time. So that's another method that at least one area district is utilizing. In our budget, we took a look at things like our fees, and we were recommending a decrease in fees. Again, that's a discussion that I know some of you have an issue with, but if you're trying to save $100,000 or $90,000 or $50,000, those are the issues you're going to look at.
And that was about 180,000 you guys were putting back into that, right? So, give or take 200,000.
Yeah. The positive about us right now on the school side, when it comes to curriculum and purchases, we're in a pretty good place in terms of we don't have these $300,000 packages to have to go buy and all of that stuff. We have holes, but none of it that we can't continue to piecemeal as best as we can. Technology is the new normal, so it's here to stay. It's not going anywhere. You guys know it from your places of employment. It's here to stay for us. One of the things we're trying to do right now is one-time costs. Let's look at technology with some of these federal funds as one-time costs and not have them in the operating budget or school choice. One-time costs, all it does is at least gets us through the next 3 to 5, maybe 6 years. If you're buying X number of dollars in 23 and X number of dollars in 24, or 22, 23, 24, potentially you've got your computers for 24, 25, 26. Ideas like that can potentially be supportive. I'll tell you what I can't control. I'm very concerned about what we call social emotional learning and education in general in the public, known as mental health. The spike is real. It is real. We are seeing it in families that are coming to us who have never had depression in their kids, never had their kids with anxiety. They've never had to deal with that, and they are dealing with it, and we're trying to support them. And there are other issues. It's not the social emotional well-being. There are other issues that go with that, but that's a target area that we're just seeing. And I can tell you right now, without getting into a lot of numbers, if you don't mind, out of the big numbers, we're just seeing it in situations that we haven't seen before. And we need to make our kids right, as far as I'm concerned.
No, thank you for that. One of the questions I have when it always comes to that, where is it that health insurance would take over at some point to help offset, or is that burden always going to be on the schools?
Yeah, so are you talking about in terms of providing the services to students?
Correct.
So I can tell you that one of our state representatives, Stephen Howard, has signed on to a bill to take a look at student tuitions that are significant and that they would be paid for by the Commonwealth at a higher percentage rate than currently. So you know that 10%, 40% goes automatically, then you get whatever X percent, you get 60% back of that tuition, but you may also only see 60 of that 60, so you're now not seeing 60,000, you're only seeing 36,000 reimbursement in the circuit breaker. There's one bill that's been filed by that's getting a little bit of love in terms of recognizing that there are these outliers, and we have a responsibility to those children and their families, but those outliers, there needs to be better funding for them. You know, when you have a $300,000 placement like we've had, when you pay 40 and on 260 you get 60% back, wouldn't it be a lot fairer if it was 90% back? Right, and that's a huge one. And then the second one, Steve, is the issue of transportation special ed. There is now a transportation circuit breaker, works the same way. They are telling us they're attempting to get it to provide funds. That's a good chunk of money for Norton Public Schools. So that would be coming back. Again, we don't know if it's coming back on 50% or 40% or 60%, but whatever that percentage would be, that would help to offset some of those costs. And then last, I think the real question you're asking is the issue of occupational therapy, speech therapy, and all of that. When are we going to be able to have some type of formula that recognizes? We did for a long time. It was the Medicaid reimbursement. And we all know what they did to that, right? They decided to put so many rules into place that, you know, if you were getting $75 for a 1 hour session and you were getting $50 of that, now you're seeing $12 of it or $10. It's a ridiculous formula that they use. So you're just not seeing that. And I think Mike in the past has shown you that reimbursement line. In the last 2 years with the new rules, it's just somewhat dipped. And I'm happy to send you, I think Matt probably has it available somewhere. We could send it to you right away if you'd like to see that, so you can see that we weren't getting the money. 8 years ago, when I started in Norton, we just didn't spend as much time on it, and we were collecting about 80,000. We got into the 240s and 250s a few years ago. It was, and it went into the general fund. It did not go. As you remember, I made an argument once that it should come directly to the school department, and I lost that argument, which is fine. But those funds just aren't there the way that they used to be.
So, Joe, you had mentioned before, like breaking things off into smaller chunks, and I like smaller, bite-sized pieces of knowledge. So if we were going forward with the recommended budget now, 2.19, Does that mean cuts would need to be made before town meeting?
No. Typically, I would try to find a way to go to the school committee via Matt on where the next 100,000 comes from between the 2.5 and the 2.19. That's what would happen. And then just articulate to all of you that we did it. I mean, 100,000 right now probably wouldn't be personnel. It might be. I take a look at not filling a retirement position. It might be that I don't take a look at that until into the summer because other people leave. And now I've said to the FinCom, there are times where if we post for a $65,000 position, on average, it might come in at 49 or it might come in at 79. And throughout the summer, that number fluctuates. And sometimes you end up with, a $50, $60, $75,000 flexibility that allows for you to just recall that person right away or post that position.
Okay.
Based on
all right, so if I'm understanding correctly, if worst case we go forward with the 2.19, that can, albeit very large, gets kicked to fall town meeting. The ideal would be somewhere around that 3% mark, which would be an additional, I think, 250,000 from where we are right now. Right?
Right.
That would make the can kicked to fall town meeting more manageable size, I would say.
Right, and the potential that Michael earlier said that there's a potential to get closer to 2.5. We move with that. I just want to be really clear. I'm adamant that we don't start these inner battles between departments. I've been key on that since I've been here. I get accused every once in a while of it for whatever reasons because I don't stand up and say, let's take money. We took money from our own one time by cutting an entire department in food services and then asking for that one-time savings. But I would ask that we, if we're at 2.19 and we all know we're kicking it down, into the October town meeting, then I have to present a balanced budget to the school committee that has further cuts in other areas. And I'm going to try to not deal with personnel right now because I'm worried about the delivery of services to students.
I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page with understanding what fall town meeting is going to look like, right? Whatever does not get funded through this process is going to need to come back in 6 months or so.
Jack, I'd like to add that too, after the debacle last year between what we committed to the schools and what actually happened going into fall town meeting, I don't think we should be kicking any can down the road. Like, it should be done this time. I mean, we've been looking at budgets for the past few months where we've seen raises in excess of 3%. And, our discussions as part of the board has been, we're not looking, our hope here is to keep people employed, not send people packing because we're giving 5% raises or 6% raises. So I think that we have opportunities from what we initially saw for some savings across the board. So we should be shooting for that level budget and not to kick the can down the road in October and hope that the money's there. But I certainly don't want to go through what went through last year. And I know Meg, Michael, and Christine weren't on the board at the time, but luckily Mary had a pretty decent memory on that. And then I think we still misrepresented the number that we get committed to.
I follow closely, guys.
And I believe, I think I'm pretty firmly on the record as being anti-can kicking. So unfortunately, that seems to be the modus operandi around here, based on just so many needs across so many departments. So, and Joe, you're exactly right. You have always been very above board and not advocating for cuts elsewhere to replenish the school budget. So I think that is spot on.
No, and I'll echo that. I think it's very important. There's not one department that's more important than another. We have a town that we have to run. There's various positions throughout that are key. We need to fund all those positions to get this town running properly. And we need that, and I do appreciate not picking and choosing from various departments or other departments looking at another department, pulling funds from there, saying it's over here or under there. We need to figure out a methodology to equally split that. And Renee, I'm not sure what debacle you're talking about from last year, but I'm all for avoiding any debacles.
Sorry, Renee, go ahead.
No, go, please.
I was going to say, I think sometimes conversations like this get presented as there's a school budget problem, and that's not true. We have a town budget problem, right? There is no division between school and municipality except in the minds of some folks. We have a town budget problem, and right now, the school department is needing to try to solve their piece of it. So, Renee, I believe you're going to give us a brief history lesson on the debacle.
I was just, and I don't, Steve, I don't know that the discussions were in FinCom if we were in joint session at the time, but we had, and I'm going to give you a really high level overview, but we had agreed at this time last year to take money out of the school budget and specifically put it into October. And we committed to a number at that time via, what I'll phrase a gentleman's handshake. And when it came time to put that money back in the budget in October, it was very much underfunded, and Mary ended up catching it. And I think we were able to get a portion of it back, but I know that there were still some funds that we did not. So I don't want to see that happen again. It wasn't a good situation, and I think the board at the time was very much of the mindset that we had made a commitment in the spring, and we were going to follow up with that commitment.
So Steve, that was 2 years ago. I think there was some confusion over that, but that was 2 years ago.
And I think we have to do our best. We can't promise. We don't know what the future holds, so never promise a number, but we will work to get to some equitable solution throughout the town, as we always do.
Yeah, I think the specifics that time were around deferring a payment on the busing contract. So the implied agreement was, all right, if we can go in at this level now, we'll make it whole in October. And so no debacles, anti-can kicking, anti-debacle. Bold stances from Norton Select Board and FinCom.
Okay.
Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Michael?
Zach?
Sorry, Zach.
Is there in order for Joe to be able to plan his budget and Mike to be able to plan his budget, is there a fixed number, 70-30, 75-25, that they can plan on year in and year out? There's only X amount of dollars to go around. You can't get blood out of a stone. So, I mean, being new to this, how is that? We just try to make everybody happy? How does that work?
I think Joe and I both agree that there's always been that talk of 70-30, but it's really not a fixed thing. It's just something that's always been talked about in a rough goal, but it's not a fixed.
But do we know what other communities, is that the same range? If I went to, I don't know, Newton, or I went to Foxborough, is it a 70-30? Is that in line? I just don't know yet.
I'm not sure about that either. Joe might have some ideas, but I'm sure it varies everywhere.
Yeah, it does vary everywhere. There was a, Mike, I don't know if you remember, but Arlington, the town of Arlington, its school departments and everything else, what they did is they are really the starters of this discussion on mandated budgets. So, you have mandated budgets on your side, contracts, for example, I do too, but then more specifically departments within budgets. So in my case, the mandated budget, English language learners, 504, special education are all mandates. So they came up with their own 10-year, if I remember correctly, I think it was 10 years on, this will be the minimum that needs to go in there because it's a mandated cost. The problem is that if you take a look at, in general, communities, there are communities that punish other departments for another department. And to me, that's where since I've been in Norton, I've always said, I guess you can say it's 70-30, but when you start to do the math, it doesn't come out 70-30. There could be a year that I'm at 71, there could be a year I'm at 68, just because of what's happening. And one of the things I think we've tried to do is recognizing that the revenue is the revenue is the revenue. We count on both sides. Everybody counts on free cash. I mean, I know Mike tries to put off overtime or healthcare or something that he can take care of at the October town meeting. And I try to do the same thing and get to a number that will at least give us a balanced budget, understanding that there are years that we get these new students that cost us money that we just didn't have any opportunity to even think that it would be that amount of money or that costly.
I think, is there any other questions regarding the budget that's been presented to us for FY22 at this point? If not, I think I see two other items on here. Dr. Bayetta, I don't know who's gonna address those.
Steve, before we go on, I had two questions.
Sure.
I know you haven't flipped it over to the board yet, but if FinCom's done, we could do that.
A subtle push. Thanks, Renee.
Well, Michael kind of moved us in that direction anyway, but I didn't want to go there without you being on board.
Thank you. Thank you for calling me out, Renee. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. It's honesty. Are we good, Steve?
Yes.
Okay. Joe, two quick questions. You mentioned an email that you had sent on Friday. I don't think that the select board had received that email.
I did not.
Is that something that you guys can share?
Yeah, I can send it to you, that's fine. I'll do that tomorrow.
Thank you. And then the second question, you kind of answered this in respect to COVID. I know we've talked probably every time that we've met in respect to the potential to use any sort of reimbursement funds or CARES Act or whatever the funding might be to help supplement the budget. Was there an opportunity, or is there an opportunity with any remaining funds to supplement the reduced bus and sports fees that you have to pay the additional difference of what we have to pay normally? Is that something that was covered or included as part of a reimbursable item?
It was not that I know of. I'll defer to Matt on that, but I'm pretty sure the answer to that was they utilized the school budget in a much more stringent way, I think, than public safety, if you will, based on some of the things that we could get. But Matt, I'll defer to you.
Yeah, so in reference to the CARES Act, they were very adamant that we could not take any items that we had budgeted and move those on to CARES Act funds. They were very clear. We asked those questions about transportation, food service, anything that was budgeted absolutely had to stay in the budget and could not be moved on to any kind of stimulus funds.
Great, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Joe.
Can I just point out Matt Wells is the only one wearing a tie at 8 o'clock at night at a FinCom meeting? Can someone tell him to at least loosen it up or something?
I have a coat on. I did leave my jacket upstairs.
Any other questions from the select board side? All right, Steve, I think we're good to move on. Thank you very much, Dr. Bayetta and Matt.
So is it somebody from the schools that are going to talk about the energy management services in the sewer lines, or is that? Sure.
I'll hit you up on the sewer lines. Matt will hit you on the energy savings. So the article on the sewer is a hold item for borrowing based on your town question that you did pass in this last election. That will go before the town meeting in May. Our project for the complex includes that we have to move our sewage line behind. As you know, the way that it runs, we still have to pump the high school. And so what we want to do, because the high school project wasn't able to at the time because there was no sewer line on the 123, we're moving sewer line directly from the high school to 123 and becoming a payer of sewage. And we're doing the same thing at the Yale school so that the two schools are independent from each other and have direct access. So this article, at approximately, if I remember correctly, 570,000 would be the number, is embedded in the actual athletic complex cost. So if it passes at town meeting, then this article will be silent. We won't act on it.
Okay, thank you.
I think you mean when it passes at town meeting, Joe.
I defer to the chairman.
Projecting positive intentions out into the world.
So I'll defer to Matt for the renewable energy.
Yeah, so the energy services contract that we have with Train, that project is phase 1 is completed, which was the assessment of the schools. $12 million worth of projects were identified, and the project will be fully funded by the savings that we generated over the next 20 years through energy savings, through some state and federal reimbursements, and through some photovoltaic, so cost avoidance through our own creation of energy. So that article will be moved forward, and that is to fund the projects. But again, as you said, we'll be paying those with future savings.
So Matt, one question I have on that, as we're moving down the road now with hopefully a couple of new buildings that should be energy efficient, and some of the initiatives that we've done from getting us to a green town, what happens with this contract for any of those projects potentially that we're getting savings now? Does that go to train? Do we keep that? How does that work?
You mean that the new buildings?
If we go to the new buildings, or even if we have a current project now, I'm not sure maybe what's happening with some of the newer projects. I know we've had replacements over the years, but as they're generating savings, does that automatically now go to train, or is that separate?
Well, the savings that we generate pays so we'll borrow to pay for the projects to be completed, and then the savings is actually utilized to pay the bond payment on an annual basis. Any new buildings that are built, Train they said they can consult on energy savings initiatives that are within the building, that are going to be planned in the building through the project manager phase. And anything in the future, because we put those buildings onto the bid. So if, we build the buildings in 3 years, and then in 10 years from now, they need to have some sort of replacement done, then Train will still be part of the district, the town municipality, and can help with those being replaced.
So will there be a collaboration as the plans are drawn up for these buildings with the Train representatives to make sure they're at least compatible, so we're not replacing something potentially down the line 10 years from now? Or?
Yeah, they're willing to do that. It all depends on how the project gets bid, I suppose. But they definitely are. They're our energy services contracted firm, so they definitely can act as a consultant for the municipality.
So currently, are any of I know you said so many projects, but are any of those projects they were looking at in this article, are they related to any of the town hall, to either the town?
No, during phase one, they looked at the schools, because that's always the your largest square footage in any municipality is going to be your school building. So they entered phase one and went and looked at the schools. So that's all of phase one. Phase two, they're working with the other town buildings. I think they've gone to see the town hall, and the police station. I think they may have done the fire station already. I'm not quite sure where they're at, as far as some of the other smaller buildings around town.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone on the finance committee have any questions regarding the train contract or the sewer line connections? Okay, Jack?
I think we've heard from Train before, but I'll open it up.
I'm good.
All set.
All right.
Excellent, sounds good. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate coming before us again tonight. I know it was somewhat short notice, and we really appreciate it.
We appreciate you guys very much, and have a nice night. I know you have hard work to do before you, but we'll get through it. That's how, to finish the night from my end, like Jack said, we're going to stay positive.
Excellent, be safe.
Care all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Mr. Chairman?
Mike, yes, and I just wanted to, as the screens get somewhat closer, I just want to make sure, earlier with Meg, I just want to say congratulations on your re-election, and looking forward to working with you for the next couple of years. So congratulations again.
Thank you, Steve.
All right, Mike?
So we have the planning director on, and we have 4 articles that we'd like to address. The first article is Article 12, and it's for an expansion of the purposes of the money that was set aside for the Reed and Barton demo of the building on the corner of Elm and Cross Street.
So, Mike, with that said, is there any way to get, first, can you give us a high-level update on where that project is? That seems to have gone into into the back burner, where I know we've taken down half the building's still there. There's a lot of work going on. And there's a lot of questions. Can you potentially just give us a very high level of where that project is right now?
Sure, and Nick, I think the building commissioner is on, and Paul. So right now, the EPA has finished cleaning up any oil that they found on site. They did tear down quite a bit of the buildings on the north side of the factory. And as you know, we tore down the buildings on the south side that were threatening to fall onto Cross Street. Right now, the site is, we just want to secure the site, and we're always applying for whatever funds we can get to help us demo the rest of that building. And Paul and Nick, if you want to weigh in on that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paul DiGiuseppe. I'm the planning director. So as Mike mentioned, we are looking at funds for demolition of the remainder of the building. Unfortunately, one of the funds we were expecting to come out this year has been pushed back about a year. It's a federal fund that gets administered through the state, and it was supposed to come out in January. I just got word this morning that they're not opening it until December, but the good news is they are still funding it, and they're combining 2 fiscal years, so we will be applying for it. We're also in conversation with the state about some other funds that we could potentially use for demolition. So, obviously we estimate that the remaining demolition would be between 450 and 500,000. But we're also looking to apply for additional contamination assessment work. Our licensed site professional just issued a report at the end of February that showed some moderate level of contamination on site, but additional work is done. I do want to say it's not a very dirty site, as sites can go with mills, but there are, we've been working with the neighborhood, and Chair, I do want to point out that I do see some representatives from the neighborhood on the call, just to let you know. So we're working with the neighborhood as well, and trying to collaborate more to keep the process going. I guess one last thing I just want to point out too, that at some point this week there's a debris pile that is on the Elm Street side. Now that the EPA is leaving the site, we do have a contractor who will be coming in and removing that debris pile.
Paul, thank you. And that's what's the definition of neighborhood? Because I know there's people that are living really close to that and they have no idea what's going on. So what's that neighborhood that you're referring to, and how close is this?
I don't know them by the neighborhood by name, but there is actually a coalition that is formed. So it's people on Talbot, Mill, Elm, Cross. In fact, some of the people who started it, the coalition's on the call, so they could certainly do a better job of explaining their neighborhood. But, as we've established a relationship with them, one of the things we've promised them is when there's major events that come about, we will notify them of those activities. So, but we've had actually 2 calls with them, 2 Zoom calls, back in December, and I want to say the end of January, to answer their questions, largely about environmental contamination and also the demolition of the site.
Okay, thank you. And the other thing is just simplicity. I mean, right now, what is that plan? I mean, are we on a 2 or 3 year plan? That's a big parcel for the town that could be very marketable at some point. But what at some point? Is it 1 year from now, 3 years from now?
That's a difficult one to respond to, because we're depending, we're trying to do our part to find grant money or some other, loans that, hopefully we can get a grant. We'd rather just have it a non-repayable grant and take that burden off of the town. So we'll be at their, it'll be up to them, to the state to approve our application. We are working, we will be working with Serpent, our regional planning agency, to actually help write that grant that we were hoping would be in January, but now December, because that's a very complicated grant to write, but these people have experience in writing such grants, so it's increasing our chances over me being able to just do it on my own. And I wish I could give you, I could give everybody a timeline of when things will happen, but at this point, I can only tell everyone that the grant cycle opens in December for that demolition fund, and that there's another statewide funding that I believe that starts in May or June, but I don't know that there's demolition funds available, but I hope to find out. I plan to find out this week if that's worth pursuing for this other series of grants.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Chairman? Steve?
Rick?
Yeah, thank you. I noticed today that actually they pretty much closed their operations. They removed the trailer from Cross Street, put down and took away the cones and the fencing from Elm Street. So it looks like they are done with their scope of work and project. And I remember when we had a last joint meeting, like we had tonight, that we were going to try to involve the federal side of government, meaning our Congress, and I think my notes correct. I think Selectman Toole was going to try to reach out to the new congressman, and I'm just looking for updates in general. You don't have to be specific at all, but I think maybe just are we still on that road? Do we think we have opportunities to go there? And I think, you know, what can we do to accelerate this, or just kind of put a real point, sharp point and clear point to getting a real plan in place from this point forward? Because today we know that this part of the job is over, and it's always been two issues. It's been safety and environmental, and we just need to keep that going forward. So if anyone wants to jump in with comments, appreciate it.
I just want to add one thing, Rick. There's a third challenging piece there, and that's ownership. Right, the former owners of that lot have gone bankrupt, and they've dissolved completely. So right now that land is sitting effectively abandoned. So special care needs to be taken to make sure that whatever we as the town do does not constitute an active ownership, and then therefore make us liable for any remaining materials that may be on site, any of the $3+ million that the federal government has spent so far between EPA, Coast Guard, and Mass DEP. So ownership is a really big concern. I know that's something that the Select Board has been informed of, and that's why we had to go get a court order before to take part of those buildings down. I don't know if that order is still in effect.
It is.
In regard to the congressman, Mr. Dorney, we had reached out to him through his district director, and we actually have two tentative dates that just haven't been finalized that will happen within the next month. So, and it's actually part of a bigger agenda of many of the people that are on this call, a leadership meeting with the congressman.
This is Paul Durkin. I live on Talbot Drive, and we are closely monitoring the environmental cleanup that both the EPA, the state has done a little bit to understand, to get closure, especially looking at, they've only started a phase 1. There's additional work that needs to be done. It was scoped out in the consultant's report, but I'm afraid phase type 2 work, or more specific environmental cleanup, is only effective when you basically don't have a building that's sitting there, because there could be pockets of things you don't know about. You're not going to be able to get access to all of the area with the existing building there. And so this is going, without the building taken down, you're going to see a prolonged environmental aspect. It's only starting the phase 2, and there's concerns about basically what's happening deeper on the site as well as down gradient. And these are hitting wells that are being used for drinking water. And so extensive monitoring has to basically take place. And so we're in a waiting mode here, and very interested in basically taking care of the issue as quickly as possible, because additional plumes in regards to going deeper or down gradient or historical releases that may have taken place over the last 10, 20 years could be all still out there and undefined at this point. It looks at the surface as being a minor or relatively minor issue, but you don't have all the releases or potential releases pathways defined. And until you do that, you could be missing entire down gradient plumes that you don't even know about. In my past remediation life, I've seen things that you would believe in regards to pathways that you would not see on older properties, especially in the New England area. So.
Thank you, Mr. Dirk. With that said, I guess what is the purpose of the article at this point, if we can get it back on track?
So right now, after the pile's removed, there'll be $63,000 remaining from the previous article, and the article was specific to the demolition of that building on the cross street side. This would allow us to use the funds to maintain security at the site, maintain a fence, enclose anytime we have to do some enclosure, especially on the south side of that building right now. So this would be enough that we think it would be able to maintain and rent the fence, and then close in any areas that are exposed. And as things happen and people break in, go back and close them again.
So is that requiring wording in the article? Is that what the expansion of purpose is?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Is that wording in there now, Mike?
That'll be in the article right now. I'll open it up for you.
While you're doing that, Mike, can I just ask a clarifying question or two? So I know the last time the neighborhood group came before us, they were very interested in the well testing. And sometime after that meeting, there was an additional well testing report that was made available. I think that was circulated with the group. Has any further testing been done downstream of the site? And if so, does anyone know the results of that?
Hi, this is Mike. I'm on Mill Lane, and I just want to, say my well testing report. Anyway, I'm kind of new to these town meetings, so pardon my ignorance just to start off. But so there's 1,4-dioxane. I'm not really sure what that chemical is, but it's been known to cause liver and kidney issues, and also could be linked to cancer. My well specifically was tested higher than the EPA's limits, and we have since switched to, bottled water. I just don't know what we do in the meantime, because it doesn't sound like this issue is going to be resolved in, I don't know, I couldn't even tell you how many years. So are we expected to just, get our own bottled water for X amount, how long. Basically, I stopped drinking this, well water over the last week because I have had significant stomach issues, not immediately since moving here 2.5 years ago, but I'd say about a year ago I started noticing stomach issues, and I wasn't really sure what they were related to. But I mean, I've been to the doctor, I've had different stomach tests and scans and other things, and really no doctor has pinpointed it until this EPA thing came out. And then, obviously getting the water tested and then seeing the results being over standard and then kind of researching it a little bit. It's just concerning to me. I'm not really sure what to do at this point. Obviously, I'm buying as much bottled water as I can. I'm not sure, where to go from here. So that's my 2 cents.
And I apologize. I think, Mike, I didn't get your last name for our minutes. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I apologize. If you could state your last name.
Yeah, sure. It's Mike Barron, B-A-R-R-O-N.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Mike
Mr.
Unit?
Chairman, could I just get Mike's address?
Sure. It's 3 Mill Lane. Sorry about that. I was having trouble with the mute button.
That's okay. I'll check into the test. And what did you say it was high in?
It's 1,4 dioxane.
Dioxin?
And it's 0.452, and the limit is 0.3.
Thank you for sharing, Mr. Barron. Appreciate that.
Yes, thanks.
This is Paul Durkin again. You wanted I read the environmental report from the consultant, and they identified, additional areas basically that need to be looked at, down gradient, deeper wells, and then wells past the wastewater lagoons system. And so they identified a number of additional areas that have to be defined, as well as I think there was some scope of testing in there of well water.
Excellent. I ask in part so that when we meet with our state and federal reps that we can ask specifically for assistance with this matter, and the water testing for sure is a hot item for me. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm assuming that the state is going to read that report at some point and respond to it.
And Jack, if I may, Paul, have you seen these reports, you or Nick, and can you provide any insight?
Yeah, and we've posted it, and the information was sent out to the neighborhood. It's some of this is way outside my scope of expertise, but my understanding from what Paul Durkin is saying and some of the other folks said that's an accurate assessment. But additional work is needed for sure. This was just the first phase of it.
Did CEC provide a summary?
I believe it had an executive summary in the report.
Steve?
Bill?
I don't know if this question is relevant to what we're trying to do here, but do we know how many wells are like down gradient that may be impacted by this? And I don't know if we need that answer now, but it would be nice to know.
I know the EPA tested a number of wells. Paul, do you have any idea on the total number? It was approaching somewhere around 10 at least, I think. The EPA wells they tested. They tested wells on Mill Lane.
Bill and Talbot.
Talbot.
And when we had our last meeting, a family mentioned, who lived on Elm Street, mentioned that they had some issues, so that well was tested as well.
By DEP.
Yes.
So I think Kevin posted some information, I think, where they can get this where the information, I think, on the well testing is available. I think what I'd like to do is potentially bring this back on track to discuss the article. Sounds like we're getting a little bit outside the realm. So I'd like to just bring it back and look at Article 12. Mike has it up on his screen and have that discussion. And I apologize, I think, Jack, maybe some of the members of the neighborhood, you might give them a little bit how to get in touch and where to go for additional questions. But I think for this article, we want to just keep on point.
No, that's fair. Yeah, anybody that wants to continue this conversation, reach out and we can get you on an upcoming meeting, and we'd love to have you back. Take it away, Steve.
Steve, may I ask a question that's related for the budget and for this article?
Sure.
I'd like to understand two things personally from this. One, what the exact amount is for these security measures. But secondly, what potential mitigants are available for the downstream impact? Because I have to tell you, like, if I were to prioritize securing that site versus trying to put something in place to provide better water to those folks who have been impacted, I'd like to see that $63,000 allocated differently. So just mentioning that as we move into this discussion.
Yep, no, I appreciate it, Renee.
Mr. Chairman? It's Rick.
Yes, Rick.
Yeah, just a quick summary, and I agree, get on and focus on the article, but it's between Mill Lane and Talbot Drive. There's 8 out of 23 properties, I believe, that are on well, and then someone mentioned expanding on to Cross Street as well. So just want to bring that to a point. And again, just getting back to the article, it's the environmental and the safety that my concern is, as far as asbestos inside the building and any future issues that could cause as well. So I just want to state that for the record.
No, thank you, Rick. So Mike Units, just looking at this article, it doesn't really seem to be that specific. Is that, I mean, you could expand it here. I don't really see about security. It kind of goes back into the licensed site professional environmental engineering. Is this wording adequate for what you're thinking? And to where Renee's point is potentially talking about other issues with this.
Yeah, because we really don't know what's going to come up that we're going to need to spend the money on. So this would allow us to spend the money on the other buildings on the site when necessary.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Bill?
how much is it to rent the fence for a year?
Well, I don't know if you have that figure. I don't have that with me.
No, I did see it, but I don't have a copy of it. Well, let me check.
Well, can we ballpark it? Is it, 5,000? Is it 30,000? Is it 1,000? I don't know what a fence rental goes for. But to Renee's point, if I'm talking safety, securing a site, and then I have money left over, say this costs, $20,000 for the fence and some plywood to secure it for a year, then yeah, I'd rather divert the other, what is it, 47,000 or whatever, to somehow mitigating people with water issues. Just my 2 cents.
I appreciate it, Phil.
Mr. Chairman,
Zach?
just a quick one. I know we want to get back on subject, but is there town water on the street in these neighborhoods? can we use some of this money to get them connected to town water, to get them off these wells? Because there's no simple fix for contaminated groundwater.
There is town water on those streets, yes.
It's an interesting idea. I like that.
And that's kind of where I was going to allude to going, you know, depending on the cost, to somehow assist in doing that.
Well, just real quick, Zach, to answer your question, as I mentioned, I believe it's 8 out of 23 properties on Mill and Talbot that are on well. However, it's important to note that the stream goes downgrade, so there really hasn't been much focus on where that water is traveling and the contamination, so forth, down Elm Street, going towards, East Main. So, this could be an expansion of that. I mean, we're at the beginning, and Paul Durkin knows much more than all of us pretty much tonight, where that can lead to. So I think it's important that we need to be very good record keepers, and we need to be very on top of this, and we need everyone's help and on the federal level and state, and keep this front and center.
Yeah, to add just a quick detail, the stream itself acts as somewhat of a barrier for basically contamination at a higher level. But deeper types of flumes or pathways basically can go and actually, hit an aquifer deeper that can travel miles away. But the scope of the report is looking at things down gradient from the lagoons, basically, that have discharged into that stream for the last 20, 25, 30, 40 years. And so there's no history down gradient, very limited sampling going down. And of course, that plume is down gradient into the wetlands and further streets down, and even at the town hall, fire department, are all basically down gradient from this site. And so understanding historically what took place, not only in the shallow upper level, but the deeper, to basically understand what the issue is and contain it and treat it. This stuff is easily treated if identified. But if you don't identify it, it just continues to get into your drinking water, exposing it. The levels that we've seen so far are relatively low, but the scope of the sample set is relatively shallow.
No, and I appreciate it. I think that's going to go to the overall assessment of this whole project. So I think, again, I don't mean to cut you off, Mr. Durkin, but I think if we can keep to the article right now, my question to Mike Eunice is the wording in this article written in such a way where we could deem it wouldn't potentially just be limited to fences and security, but if we deem some other additional steps could be taken on that property, is the wording enough to allow the funding to happen or be spent on some other additional things like we've talked about tonight?
Is Mike muted?
It does, if you look down, where it says including but not limited to expenditures for a licensed site professional and environmental engineering costs related there too. So I would think that would cover, $63,000 isn't a lot of money when it comes to expanding out onto environmental engineering costs.
And like just for the record, how would it? So we would vote on $63,000 for this article, correct?
Yeah, the motion would be to repurpose the balance remaining in Article 12, as stated.
And then who deems how those funds will be spent? Is it the building commissioner with a group of people, or is it?
It would be the building commissioner and Paul and the health agent.
Okay. Okay.
And the original article was, it was for the abatement and the demolition and temporary fencing of all buildings along Cross Street. So this would now expand that to reference the buildings along Elm Street.
Okay. All right. Does anyone on the finance committee have questions that pertain to the article as written here?
Steve?
Sorry, Mike.
Steve?
Is that Bill?
Yep.
All right, Bill, go ahead.
So just to be clear, this 63,000, again, is really specific to this site. So I know we did that tangent to other issues, but I don't think the way I'm reading this, that you can say, okay, we can use 20,000 to secure the site and use the other, 43 for something else. So it's specific to what's happening on this site is how I'm reading it. Is that correct?
I would say, yes, you're correct right now. Yep. I don't see that we have enough money to do much other than this site.
Okay.
Thank you.
Steve,
Yes.
I would like to ask Mike, what happens in the event that we start down a path, which sometimes happens, and we think it's going to cost us $45,000, and we start, and then we realize once we've started, it's going to cost us $245,000. Just
Right,
to play devil's advocate, because
Yep.
you know
No,
that.
that's fine. That's why we're not planning on demoing the buildings. So, there's nothing to do with that. It's just to maintain what's there, and keep the fencing up, pay for the fencing, keep the building secure, and if possible, if there was a need to get rid of any asbestos, small amounts, obviously, with what we have here, but we just can't remove the building with this money. It's just not enough.
Right.
So,
Have we done a cost analysis on the difference between renting a fence and buying a fence? Just
yes, I know that the building commissioner has looked at that.
Are you all set, Amy?
I think so.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Chairman,
Zach?
just one more question before we move on from this. I see Frank is on here from the water department, and I just have a question as what the water department charges to tie in a house to town water, as long as the line is running in front of the house. If Frank, you're on.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, good. Having problems with the mic and the camera tonight. The charge, there's a flat fee for the water service connection depending on the size that's required. 3/4 or 1 inch is typically what you'd see on a residential home. There's additional costs that are very hard to calculate depending on the location of the water main in the road. Obviously, there's going to be a trench excavation from the road to the property line to install that water service, road reclamation, and possibly police detail. So there is a variable charge that can happen with depending on the location of the property. One issue that we would have down here on Talbot is actually Mill Lane. Mill Lane does not have a water main on it, so that would be a total construction project to bring a water main
and fire hydrants down there to allow water services to connect off of Mill.
Mr. Chairman?
Who was that? Was that Rick?
Yeah, just, Frank, it's Rick. Just for everyone, the development's about 1997, 1998, it was built. The majority of the homes, as I mentioned, I think it's 8 on wells out of 23. Mill Lane came and was built 5 years after 1998. And the homes that are on the wells were in situations where the town would only allow so many hookups to a new development, and those particular properties involved ledges or other obstacles that made it a little bit more difficult to hook up. So that's kind of how that all transpired. But in general, at the end of the day, it's eight homes or 8 properties out of those 23 that are affected. And as Paul mentioned, it's really, you really start getting into it, it expands much more. So, and again, it's at the beginning, our coalition's main objective was to get a town involvement or awareness of the issue with the property at Reed and Martin on a safety issue and concern, and then obviously this environmental issue. So I think that the environmental issue is not going to be solved overnight, but I think we need to really work on this together and see what we can do with obviously the 63,000, but just to make a good intent and an agreement that we need to do this as a town, and we need the federal government involved to get this really to the next level. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. So,
sorry, Steve, I was going to try to wrest back control and get us back in control, given the late hour of the evening, as someone used to say, right?
Yep, no, appreciate it. Thank you. So I think...
Does that mean it's our turn?
I'm sorry, was that Renee?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Just waiting for you to send it over to us, Steve.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So in respect to the article, my thoughts are, I'm not all that comfortable with the language that's being presented to us. I'd like to see something that is more specific to maintaining security, to include fencing or enclosing the building. I know Mike mentioned South Side specifically, but I think that could stay general. Additionally, there was some mention that you just said about asbestos removal, and personally, if there's any sort of asbestos removal, that I think that needs to be in a separate article, understanding what the cost would be, what the potential future cost would be, and then a discussion that we probably need to have with town council before we move forward on that. So I don't think that should be a part of this article, because we are still running the risk of liability with the town. And I know Jack mentioned, current liability, but it's also future liability of other things that are identified. So I think we need to be very clear that this is to maintain the security on the site. If there's any funding that the town could provide out of the $63,000 to go towards additional testing for the residents, or maybe we look for this to bring the water dispenser back. So for those residents who know that their wells have some contamination in it, they have a free way of getting water to support the town, and I think that would actually support other people as well. Additionally, the one question I would like to ask Paul is, Paul, you mentioned the amount of grant money that is out there. Do you know, I think you mentioned 2 grants, what the ballpark amount could be from a demolition perspective? Because I think also in the article, we need to be clear that this is not for demolition of the building.
Yeah, so for that grant that's being pushed back, that could go up to as much as $800,000. So that would cover what we believe would be the remaining amount for demolition. This other series of grants, I need to talk with a representative from I'll be in touch with a representative from Mass Development. I'm supposed to talk with them this week to see what funds may be available and how much that would be if we're eligible. But the other grant would cover the entire cost of demolition.
Okay.
Assuming we received it, which of course these grants are highly competitive.
Sure.
Did we put that grant in yet? And when would that come through if it was provided to us?
Well, that grant was supposed to have gone. The cycle was supposed to open in January. Now we're being told December. So, and that's a real, obviously a frustration. And I can't even imagine what the neighborhood's feeling upon hearing this. But it'll probably take about 3 months or so for them to determine the awards, and then from there. Then it would, if we were awarded, then things could move fairly quickly because we would have to have a full demolition plan in place during that time.
And I apologize, who had asked that question? I didn't get the voice or the name.
Cheryl Guinan.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chair. I should have let that go through you. My apologies.
No problem. No problem. I just didn't get the name. Okay. So with that said, Mike Units, what if we have to rewrite this article?
So let me just say, so where it says to expand the purposes for which funds appropriated under Article 13 may be expended to now also include the areas of the buildings along Elm Street. So you're expanding the purpose of the funds. And in the Article 13, the funds were appropriated for the purposes of abatement, demolition, temporary fencing of buildings along Cross Street. So this just says we would now include, and it specifically said in Article 13, excluding from the purposes of this article the buildings along Elm Street. So this would now include the building on Elm Street.
Mike, I didn't understand what you just said. The comparison between the first one just said the one building and this one just says all buildings, just the plural?
The first one excluded any buildings on Elm Street. So this right now would allow us to use this money on the buildings on Elm Street for abatement, demolition, straw wattles, any temporary fencing, and then the licensed site professional or environmental engineering if needed.
So if we deem this
I'm sorry, Steve, could I just check real quick?
Rick, I'm going to hold off on this one just so we can.
I was just going to say I'm sorry. Okay.
Sorry. But Mike, if we're expecting this to be rewritten, would this have to be voted with no action at this point until it can be rewritten and then resubmitted?
It can be, yeah, it can be, you could just not vote on this now, but I would need to know what you want as far as rewriting it.
Okay, but we would have time to potentially rewrite this for this town meeting and vote on it accordingly.
Yes.
Okay. I guess maybe just thinking about it right now, I think, and I don't feel comfortable taking a vote on it. I think maybe we can have the file, ask the finance committee to think about this one, and we will talk about this again on Wednesday night. With the anticipation that if the wording is appropriate, we can take a vote. And Jack, I'm not sure on your board with the thoughts.
Jack, did you catch that?
No, I'm sorry. My children were just yelling at me, so my attention was momentarily distracted.
Steve had just asked if essentially that we come back and we revisit this with some potential language change in the article.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. How about the rest of you?
I agree.
I would agree. Mike, just for clarification, this used to be Article 14, is that correct?
It was.
Okay.
It was. 2 articles have been taken off.
Okay, so they do automatically move up and so forth from that. Okay, thank you.
So from this one, on this article itself, is there any more questions that pertain to this article from either the Finance Committee or the Select Board at this time? Okay, hearing none, then I think we've exhausted the conversation on Article 12 for tonight. If we can move on to the next article, Mike?
Okay, there's 3 articles that Paul will talk on. The Planning Board has held their hearings, and they have made recommendations on 3 articles. This is the first article. You have it in your packets, and Paul, if you want to take it from here on the 3 articles, it'll be the next 3, which are 17, 18, and 19.
Okay, and I do want to just also mention that the speakers who are for each of the articles are here. But for each of the articles, the Planning Board recommended the language is written in the warrant. This first one is actually Renee will take the lead on this because this was coming from the Economic Development Commission. But as you recall, back in October, at town meeting, the town passed a new or significantly revised marijuana bylaw. This seeks to make some improvements and fix this to that bylaw, including for definitions and some other things that we realized that happened after the passage of the original, such as dealing with building permits. So, Chair, if you're okay, if Renee can speak on this as the subject matter expert.
Do we get a yes from that?
Steve frozen?
Yep, go ahead, sorry, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I'm trying to find, I want to make sure Mike's able to scroll because I can't control the screen. Mike, are you there? So Steve, can anyone pull back the sharing, or can I try to share over?
Go ahead, Renee, if you could try and share over. I don't have the...
Okay, let me try, give me 1 second. We're just looking for it on my copy. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
So as Paul indicated, a couple things with these 3 changes. The first is, if you remember, we moved these articles from the initial Springtown meeting last year into the Fall Town meeting. Shortly after we approved it, the Cannabis Control Commission put forth new legislation in respect to delivery operators and delivery couriers. So what we did is we went back to look not only at the definitions of those, but also how that impacted the bylaw. So the first section that talks about here is literally, it's a full, for Article 2, Section 175, 2.2. It is a complete replacement of the previous marijuana establishment definition. And what we've done is we've added some context to the front, but essentially it is the Cannabis Control Commission regulation. So it provides for many different areas that we had before, and then also includes the delivery licenses that they put in place about a month after we approved this at town meeting. Additionally, within the actual marijuana bylaw, we did the same thing with definitions. So we added in, just for ease of reference within the bylaw for the planning board and for others, we added in the definitions for delivery license, delivery licensee, the marijuana courier, delivery operator, marijuana delivery operator or delivery operator, micro business and warehouse. So those are directly within the marijuana bylaw specifically now for reference. Additionally, one thing that we found, we had a bit of an oversight that made it really impossible for somebody to open up a marijuana establishment. You'll see here the language. This is the second item that we listed within the warrant article, but the change. So the previous language mentioned that a marijuana establishment or medical treatment center could commence operation, that they could not commence operation or apply for a building permit prior to its receipt of all required permits and approval, including its final license from the appropriate commission. In order to get the final license from the Cannabis Control Commission, they do an on-site inspection. So they have to do the inspection of the completed building. So we needed to remove this section here or apply for a building permit. And what we did instead is that we listed the marijuana establishment or MTC that they couldn't apply for a building permit prior to the receipt of the special permit and site plan approval. So we make sure that the process within the town is followed the way that it was designed. They get their provisional license from the Cannabis Control Commission. They can then apply to receive a special permit and a site plan approval. That process will take place. They could then apply for a building permit as needed, and then the Cannabis Control Commission would give its final license before they open the doors. So more of a administrative error or oversight that we had, and we corrected it with this update. And then finally, the last update is this old article that was on there on temporary moratoriums for recreational marijuana establishments. You'll see it has a date of 2016. I believe it has an expiration date within the language of 2018. So this is a full delete from the bylaw to just remove it as it's no longer applicable. So it's just some housekeeping cleanup there. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Renee, one question I have is, I didn't see the section, but if you could scroll down, it references a 20% number of, I think those licenses can't exceed 20% of.
Yep. The number of licenses issued within the town for the retail sale of alcoholic beverages. So that's the minimum required within Massachusetts that you have to have. Now that's a change, Steve, that we put in the bylaw initially. We added that into what I'll call the new bylaw of last year.
So if we had to put this in numbers, what does that mean? If we have X number of licenses today, what's that 20% number result in?
2. So right now we have 9 liquor licenses. So we have 2, we're able, because we round up, we have 2 retail establishments. And this is only specific to retail establishments. It's not specific to any other marijuana establishments.
Right. So overall, it looks like there's some housekeeping items that we're taking care of with these article changes. Is that correct?
Yes.
And Paul, do you agree with that? These are more housekeeping than changing intent or anything else?
Correct. Housekeeping.
Okay. Does anyone else on the Finance Committee have questions for Renee at this point? Okay. We're a chatty group.
Well, I think this group's seen it quite a bit. I mean, I know not these changes specifically, but again, these are housekeeping. I mean, this isn't something that really rises to the level that you would think that would need to go to open town meeting, but unfortunately that's our government right now, so that's the process.
Mr. Chair, just to be clarified, Ms. Telly's comments, there are 5 liquor licenses in town. alcohol licenses in town. Just for a clarification point.
Thank you.
Or matter, Renee. Because it applies to liquor licenses, not all alcohol licenses. All alcohol licenses, not just beer and wine.
Right, the sale of alcohol beverages.
Yeah, liquor and malt beverages.
Any other questions from the select board side? Hearing none, take it away, Steve.
All right, I think, is there one more article from planning? I think there was.
Two more.
Two more, okay.
Yes.
Steve, could I interject? I know we have some folks from the petition article on that they've been waiting, and given the lateness of the hour, would anyone mind if we kind of took things out of order so that they could get off?
No, I think that makes sense. And I think, for clarifying this, this is the petition we heard a couple of weeks ago, and just wondering if we could give an overview before we start, basically what we found in our review. Is this the same concern, where the maps didn't seem to be correct?
Hey guys, I'm sorry, can I just ask before we move on? I believe that the select board had already voted for the previous article that we just talked about. Is this something that we would want FinCom to vote on before moving forward?
Renee, at this point, I did not see that in our packet, so what I'd like to do is hold off on voting this tonight, but I will bring it up on Wednesday. I just didn't see this in our packet. I'm not sure if it was there or not, but I don't see an Article 17 in our packet.
It was 19.
It refers in your agenda to all zoning articles. Mr. Chairman?
Mike?
On your agenda, it refers to all zoning articles.
Yeah, no, that wasn't, I see it's on the agenda, I just don't see the verbiage other than what's being shared on screen.
You should have it. It was emailed to you. If you look at your annual town meeting score sheet, and then the articles should all be with that.
Yeah, I'm looking at the score sheet, and what I see is that the last article on, I'm looking at the right one. Special. Okay, all right, I do have, that's me. So what I'd still like to do is we can give the Finance Committee a little bit of time to read this and come back with any questions, and we'll vote on this Wednesday, give more people time. All right. So I think, Paul, if you could just, we're talking about the petition article. If you wouldn't mind just giving an update. I think the last time we met, it potentially was referenced that this may have been a mistake in the mapping. And I know you were going to review this. Is that still is that still the case?
Well, it has to go forward to town meeting. If there was an error, our town council said that there's a period of time by which the property owner has the ability to appeal it, but that long expired. But the planning board did support the article as written, particularly because of the error that might have occurred. But they did support the rezoning from R80 zoning to commercial.
Okay. Is there any other discussion on this article at this time? I know we have people that want to speak to that. Is there anything you'd like to say?
Good evening. Attorney Henry Sousa, represents Seal Drain, and as was just represented to you, Mrs. Drain is attempting to correct what she believes to be a mistaken change in the zoning. Planning board graciously voted to support this, to assist her, and from the perspective I would expect of the Finance Committee, a property zoned commercial will contribute more in taxes while using less is residential and gets built as a single family home. What's that, 2.3 children in the school system that you don't have with a commercial property. But this is a relatively small parcel of property. I think it's important that everyone keep in mind that it's only 33,000 square feet from Mrs. Drain's property, and there's a smaller adjacent parcel that's only 4,000 and some square feet. And the property is bounded by White Street, Newland Street, and East Main Street. And we think it's more appropriate commercial, and that's what it was originally, and somehow over the years it changed. So we hope you'll support the article as well.
Yeah, and thank you. Jack, I don't know, do you have any, your board, any conversation or discussion that we didn't hear the last time?
No, I think we hashed this one out pretty good. I think this is obviously Christine's first time hearing it as a member of the board, so I don't know if she may have any questions. And Mike, please feel free to clarify if we still need to vote. I think we did.
I don't think it, let's see. No, you voted just on Article 17. You didn't vote on this article.
So with that said, anyone on the board have any questions, or if not, I'd entertain a motion to support Article 19.
Mr. Chairman, just make a point before the motion.
Yeah, please go ahead, Michael.
I had sent an email to the board and so forth, just sharing a petition, a citizen's petition against this article from the residents of Red Mill Village, and I just wanted to just kind of go on record that there was a petition to try to appeal that about this article, and that's all. That's it.
Thanks, Michael. So any further conversation?
Mr. Chairman, if I can have a statement, please.
A statement is okay. I think last time you shared a PowerPoint, so if we could keep it brief and to the topic at hand.
If I could share a brief PowerPoint, it would help.
I don't think that that's appropriate for this venue. Anyone can feel free to overrule me, but if it's the same one we saw before, it was about the potential commercial development of that area. And I think that that is a far more relevant item for planning board if and when anything goes on that site, and not for this particular cause.
Well, to beg the question, right now, basically town council has eradicated the question of an error. And basically, in 1998, there was a master plan, and the planning board notes from that report suggest that they were adopting a town-wide revision of the zoning based upon, in part, the master plan. So the question that keeps coming up about being an error that happened 44 years ago is really a misnomer in terms of what the board did and how it reacted. Beyond that, the question now is really, the question of notice is also a non-starter because it was a general application, and the only notice that was required was by publication and posting, which was done for the entire town. And if that was wrong, the zoning for the entire town is off. So that's not an issue. So really the issue is whether or not this property should be zoned appropriately commercial or residential. And I just want to point out to the board, one of the things I had all along 123 are 30,000 square foot residential homes. They're all on 123 and they're really across from Red Mill Village. They run all the way across in front of this property and up to Birch Street, as a matter of fact. In addition, be aware that from Leonard Street to Newland Street, probably about a half a mile, there are approximately 400 residential units, which I assume average about 2 per unit. There's about 800 residents and residential units in that strip of land, which is probably more intense than any other place in town. And basically, on either side of that even though you look at the plan, it says Red Mill Village is zoned commercial. It's currently used specifically as residential. In addition, the property immediately across the street on Newland Street between it and the commercial space is also zoned residential 80. So all the areas surrounding this are used for residential purposes. I would suggest also that by reason of the limited space this is, and basically the way that the rest of the area is configured, this would tantamount to spot zoning. And I would respectfully suggest that the town might want to check with town council to verify whether or not this in fact would be spot zoning, because with all due respect, I think it might be. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren.
So Jack, I'm going to move a motion that the board accept Article 19 as written.
Do I hear a second? Thank you, Meg. All right, so we have a motion from Renee, second from Meg. Go to the vote. Christine? Is that a yes? Sorry.
That's a yes.
Okay, thank you. Your first motion, or your first vote, congratulations. Meg?
Yes.
Michael?
Nay.
Renee?
Yes, and I want to thank Warren for providing context and the opinion and information as well.
I too am a yes, and I will thank Oren for that, and just point out that I believe, even with what he was saying about it not being a map error, they're approaching it as if it is a rezoning article. So I believe the petitioner is doing legally what they need to do. So 4-1, motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jack. Just one quick, Paul, before I bring this up for a vote. Do you agree with that statement on the spot zoning?
I do not agree with it. I think that either one would not qualify, neither one would qualify as spot zoning, because you have, on one side of the street you have commercial, the other side you have residential 80. But that's my opinion, not an attorney, but spot zoning typically is where you have an outlier of zoning in an area, but that's not the case here with either zoning district.
Okay. All right, thank you. And Norman, thank you as well for your input, but I will entertain a motion on this article from the Finance Committee.
Mr. Chairman,
Amy?
I move that we recommend Article 19 as written.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Article 19 as written. Any other discussion or conversation? Hearing none, I'll go to the vote.
Can I ask?
Is that Bill?
Yeah, can I ask one thing? I know we heard this 2 weeks ago or whatever. And I may have my parcels incorrect. Parcel 33 is the big piece of this small piece, and parcel 33-01 is the smaller piece. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And Ms. Drain owns parcel 33 and someone else owns 33-01?
Yes, that's also correct. And the other owner also supported the change in zoning.
Have we ever seen anything or heard anything from that other owner to support that?
Yes, she spoke up at the planning board meeting and indicated that she wanted to support the article.
At which meeting?
The planning board meeting.
It was the public hearing.
Okay, so not in front of us 2 weeks ago or whenever it first came to us.
No, not at your meeting.
Okay, and can someone from planning just confirm that?
Yes, I can confirm. She was at the meeting, the planning board meeting, on April 6th.
And she supported it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. We do have a motion and a second to approve Article 19 as written. Any other discussion, conversation? Okay, hearing none, I'll go to the vote. Amy?
Yes.
Peter?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Zach?
Sorry, yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Mrs. Drain, appreciate the support.
Okay, Mike? Or is it Paul?
The next article is Article 19, and this involves a rezoning of parcels to, or Article 18, I'm sorry, we're going backwards. This involves rezoning parcels on East Main Street. Paul, you want to talk on that?
Sure. These are the parcels right across from Blue Star Business Park, so it's right at 123 and 495. This is the land that's owned by MassDOT, and this is where the salt shed is, part of it. There's 4 parcels, all zoned residential 80, and MassDOT has come forward and submitted a request to rezone this to industrial. So at our last meeting on April 6th, the planning board recommended the language as written in the warrant to and supported rezoning from residential 80 to industrial. I also want to point out there are representatives from MassDOT here as well that can describe, if you would like them to describe that project or that site in more detail.
Yeah, no, I'd like to hear, what's the intent of this article and why now, so that I'd appreciate them having a conversation with them. And if each one, when they speak, if they could please state their name clearly for the minutes.
My name is Craig McEwen. I'm Deputy Director of the Office of Real Estate and Asset Development at MassDOT. And with me I have Tom Cox. Tom, are you on? I know you were.
Yes.
Still.
Yeah.
There he is. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Craig. Mr. Chairman, members of the Finance Committee, Board of Selectmen, Town Manager. So my name is Tom Cox. I work for a company called Greystone. We provide real estate services to MassDOT. If you would be allowed, and with permission, I'd like to share my screen for a brief presentation.
Sure.
So just wanted to confirm you can see my screen. Okay, very good. So MassDOT owns approximately 3.7 acres on East Main Street, 123, also having frontage along 495, the slip ramp, going in I think that's in a westerly direction. It also abuts a town-owned parcel of land, which I'm going to probably reference multiple times. So just at the top of the plan here, this is I don't know if you can see my cursor, this is a 10-acre parcel of land that the town owns. It's a former MassDOT parcel of land that was deeded to the town at some time in the past. It is, and does have a deed restriction on the parcel of land to be set aside for open space or passive recreation or some type of recreation type purpose. So that is a town-owned parcel of land that is not included in this rezoning petition. MassDOT has on site several different operations. It's got snow and ice activities, which are basically the salt shed that you see when you drive by. We also have district offices that are occupied on a daily basis and are important to the management of MassDOT roadways in this district and in the region. And then we also use the site like we use any other MassDOT facility for project laydown. Project laydown is basically the storage of materials if and when there's a certain project in the area, such as kind of stone, work vehicles, etc. So we have an active use of the site. You see here in the shadow, it's down here on the right. This would be 123 to the right, and the rest of it would be 36 acres. To the left here, that's the Canoe River, and there's other natural resources that exist on the site as well. This is a screenshot from your town GIS system. To the left here is the Canoe River that I just mentioned a moment ago. These are various floodplains that are associated with that resource, the Canoe River. Floodplains meaning when it rains, the river swells, and how far and wide that river swells. There's also wetland resources that are here as well that are contributory to the Canoe River. All of which are predominantly bound within this highlighted area. I'm just using the word predominantly because you don't know until you actually go out and do a survey of the site and have the wetlands flagged, et cetera. So they're plus or minus within what you see here on the site. Also here in purple is a wellhead protection zone. So the property is, the majority of it you see here on the line is in a wellhead protection zone. That determines what type of uses you can ultimately have on site. We had a lengthy discussion with the planning board over the last 2 months around various uses that could be allowed on the site and the various protections that the town has within its existing bylaws to require special permits, whether they be a 10,000 square foot building or above. So whether you're in the industrial district or not, whether you build a building that's 10,000 square feet or above, just to kind of put some bookends around that, the average CVS store is about 13,000 square feet. So approximately that size, a little bit smaller. Any building that size would require a special permit. All the buildings across the street at Blue Star require a special permit because of the nature of their use. That special permit allows the town to look at various uses on the property, whether or not you're in the commercial or industrial zoning district, that is, such as traffic impacts or use impacts, et cetera, site plan review impacts, or what have you. So just wanted to comment on that. I'll do it a little bit later as well. But I just want to note it here, as you see that a portion of the site is within that wellhead protection zone, as shown here in purple. The town on a parcel of land, and again, hopefully you can see my cursor, is in this area here, separating it from Red Mill Village, which is to the top right of the plan. I'm also going to show here in a moment a plan that shows that it's approximately 280 feet from their property line to the Mass Dot property line, so there would be a natural buffer no matter what happened on this parcel of land for that development to enjoy. You see here again a couple of screenshots from your GIS system. The yellowish color here is the residential zoning district that we are within, we Mass Dot that is. The orange lines are the property lines that is Mass Dot 36 plus minus acres. This red is the commercial district that runs along Route 123. And then in purple is the industrial zoning district across the street where Blue Star Park is. We, after much consideration and discussion with the town, like lead for advice, not for definitive direction, chose to include it within the industrial district. When you think about industrial uses or non-industrial uses, and I'm going to quickly go through this slide here in a moment, but just wanted to say, and Paul can fact check me on this, is commercial uses or industrial uses, your mind seems to think immediately, well, industrial uses are the dirty uses or the steam, the steam plants or the smokestacks or whatever. Those types of uses don't necessarily exist anymore, or they're extremely rare. But the one reason, not one reason, but the significant reason to choose the industrial district over the commercial district is because of the allowed uses that existed within the industrial district. And one of those uses is basically life science. In Massachusetts, particularly in the suburban areas, are really two active uses. It's logistics, such as Amazon, and or other shipping and receiving type of uses. What's happening up in and around the Boston area is that industrial uses, shipping and receiving, logistics, are really getting pushed out of the city because the property values have expanded so much that the property owner is saying that it's probably worth more as a residential building than the underlying industrial. But that can also be said for Quincy and some other suburban areas. So the further areas out of 128 and 495 are enjoying a lot of new development because of that phenomenon, so to speak, that's happening up in the city, whether it's in Boston, East Boston, Dorchester, downtown, South Boston, Dorchester Street in South Boston. All those areas that are historically industrial are getting upzoned and are being planned for the uses, pushing that use up. The other use that is occurring right now is life sciences. Life sciences are those uses such as, I think we're friendly with, or familiar, I should say, with the word Moderna and some of these other uses because of COVID, but those are the life science uses that Boston, Cambridge totally enjoys above and beyond other parts of the country. There are other pockets, but we up here in Massachusetts, really have a significant density of that. And the fact that I shared with the planning board and I'll share with you all is that if you look at the Seaport District, which is maybe 10, 11, 12 years old, right, is the second largest life sciences district in the city of Boston after Cambridge and Kendall. So it's a very interesting from a land use perspective, a jobs perspective, et cetera, that the Seaport has that. The difference between the Seaport, Cambridge, and maybe Watertown when it comes to life sciences is that the research happens up kind of in those areas. And it happens up in those areas because of accessibility to public transit, the accessibility to the colleges that are in close proximity, et cetera. What happens in the suburban areas in and around Boston with regard to life science is the manufacturing component of life sciences. And you all have a significant user over on Commerce, I think it's Commerce Hall Way, Anilum, which is a life sciences manufacturer that is doing a substantial operation over there. And that's a type of use that I think after, thinking about this property, talking discussions with the town, that's a type of use that would be, have less, traffic impact than maybe an operation of the logistics, although that would perhaps be acceptable. But more importantly, and I don't want to speak for the town, but I'll let others do that, is that the tax opportunity for that type of life sciences manufacturing use is like 7-8 times higher than the standard industrial logistic building. Although that's a good alternative tax base, not taking anything away from that. The life sciences, has a significant significant tax opportunity for the town above and beyond logistics. Why am I telling you all this? The reason why I'm telling you all this is because going back to the industrial versus commercial zoning district is that the industrial district, put aside the word industrial and commercial for a moment, the industrial district by your schedule of uses allows for that manufacturing type of use. That manufacturing type of use that would be allowed, that would be favorable to life sciences. If we were in the commercial zoning district, that manufacturing component does not fit within it. So you would narrow down your opportunity to a warehouse type of operation for the most part. There may be other uses and et cetera, but it really takes out a significant tax opportunity for the town and a very significant, jobs opportunity for the region, kind of et cetera. So that's why we were thinking about industrial over commercial. We, Craig, myself, others in the Commonwealth from the MassDOT side, we made the commitment, make it again here tonight, is that prior to this property ever going out to bid, we will work with the town manager. He being, that position being the most senior person at town hall. We'll work with others, obviously, as well. But before we go out, we'll talk to the town. We'll think about how do we advertise this to the right people? How do we market it? Talking to Craig about how we would work with the Mass Buyout Council, to make sure that they market it as well, so it gets the best exposure as possible. And it's not just the local developers, with no disrespect to any local developer, but it really gets the true, national, exposure. That's what I do, at Greystone, to give it a true natural, big exposure to a lot of different people to make sure that, we, for the town, after zone industrial, get the best opportunity, as possible. So it's totally long-winded there, and I apologize. And I suggested before, who am I? I suggest Paul fact check me, kind of on my comments to make sure they're accurate. Been working well with Paul on that. Again, to make sure that what I'm saying is accurate. This is lastly, schedule of uses. One difference is if it's industrial, it's an additional 50 feet away from the abutting uses. So you get an additional 50 feet from the buffer zone, which I'm going to show you in a minute. If it's industrial, pushing it away from the neighborhood, which is somewhat of a positive thing. On top of allowing for the highest and best use. I noted before, this is the setback this is the property line down here with MassDOT land. This is the town land, approximately 10 acres here. This, hopefully you can see it through Zoom, is a light line. This is approximately the property line for Red Mill Village. 281 feet natural buffer, 100 feet or 50 feet, 100 feet for the industrial, 50 for the commercial, if we ever went that way. We absolutely want to do industrial, by the way, but it's another 100 feet kind of front. So, just in conclusion, the industrial district allows for the best opportunity to attract the highest and best use for the site, highest and best use, taking into consideration tax-based opportunities for the town. And we've also has said, and although not here, that we'll work closely with the town on how we market it and achieve that. Lastly here, and the last bullet point, is that you have strong underlying zoning rights. Mentioned the 10,000 square feet a moment ago. In your schedule of uses of the zoning bylaws, there's all sorts of uses that allow for special permits, which are incremental opportunities for discretionary special permits at the local level. So to the extent that somebody, some end user wanted to propose some alternative use in the area that just wasn't appropriate, the 10,000 square foot, special permit is likely to get triggered, and then the underlying uses. So some developer would have to seek multiple special permits and not just kind of one to develop their site. So I did that quick, done it a couple of times. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman, and others on it. Hopefully I haven't taken too much of your time.
No, thank you for your patience so far. One question I have is on the zoning map, and it's hard for me to see, but where is that property on the north end? I guess it'd be northwest. What is the abutter there? I know Red Mill Village is to the east, right? What's in there where you're?
Yeah, it's across. So let me show it here. So across the Canoe River and across the floodplain zones, which are vegetated, are residential houses off in this direction. It's just like Paul, I believe it's a single-family residential development.
It's Wilbur Street area.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
And there too, Chair, it's important to note that with the Canoe River there are setbacks, buffers from the river. That's a state requirement that would be in addition to some of these other setbacks.
And if we had discussed butters at this point?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, was that a question for me?
Paul?
I'm sorry, Chair, could you repeat that, please?
Yeah, has there been discussion with the abutters?
Yes, they were notified, and there was a very large turnout for both planning board meetings. And so the issues were, just in a nutshell, was traffic, concerns about specific types of industrial uses, noise. And so, there was quite a bit. We had, one night, we had 85 people on the call.
Okay. And I apologize, I think asking a question I couldn't hear what it was. Peter.
Yeah, so let's get right to the crux of it. You want to change this to industrial, right? So what's the idea? What are you going to put there? You must know if you want to change something. What do you want to put there? So what do you want to put there?
We don't have a developer. We don't have an intended use. We have just trying to find the biggest opportunity underneath the zoning with the least amount of impact, so to speak. Just 2 seconds or maybe 30 seconds on this is that anytime MassDOT sells a piece of property, they have to do a public procurement process. So that's where my company, the company I work for, kind of comes in. We take it out, we blast it out to multiple developers, not just local developers, but national developers, and et cetera. So it's a scenario where like thousands of, without exaggeration, thousands of developer types and then people that have expressed interest to be informed will be exposed to this opportunity. We're also going to take a special interest in working with the Mass Bio Council and others so that they too, are exposing it to their membership. We don't have a very specific use, like it's going to be a, Tom Cox, the pharmacist here, or the researcher, or Tom Cox, the mechanic. It's not, those uses aren't identified yet. They'll come with who the buyer is going to be. Last comment, although I said that a lot. Last comment, and I didn't note, is that because it's a state property, we are bound by MEPA. So we, MassDOT, cannot sell the property until MEPA occurs. MEPA is a state permitting process. They take into consideration impacts to wetlands, traffic impacts, and things of that nature. So above and beyond the local permitting process, special permits, we, MassDOT, will require any interested party to go through the MEPA process, an incremental level of review and protection for the town.
So, Mr. Chairman, so I'll keep going. So the impetus of doing this is that MassDOT wants to sell the property essentially to, are they going to be moving from it? If they want to sell part of the property to someone to put something there? Is that what the impetus is? They want to make some money off the property?
In others, the local level could step in. So there was a local interest for us, MassDOT, to think about this repurposing of this property as an alternative tax base. So yes, it may be a financial opportunity for MassDOT, but it was truly in reaction to or in support of a local initiative to potentially repurpose the site. So that was the impetus, so to speak, to think about it. With regard to MassDOT's use, as of right now, MassDOT needs to stay on the site. We may occupy 5-6 acres plus or minus out of the 36, 37 that are here. We're unlikely, although things can change, unlikely to leave the site. We may not be in the current location, but we may be, in a different location on the site.
Mr. Chairman?
May I just speak to that just real quickly? Is for the last 10 years, Representative Barrows and previous select board members have approached the state and DOT to try to free this piece of property for development. And I know that anywhere from commercial to industrial, I know that they're looking to do it industrial because that opens up the most opportunities, especially along 495, where there's a huge interest from companies of life science and so forth for that property. But this property has been eyed by the town and development for well over 10 years, and it's been a discussion point on that. And I know Representative Barrows and other previous select board members and other businesses in the town have been eyeing this piece of property, just for some color to the discussion.
Great, thanks, Mike. I guess that's what I was getting at. Like, all of a sudden somebody must want to do something with this property, and the state saying, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. It's not just, the state doesn't just change something out of the blue just to change it, so.
People have been bugging the state for easily 10 years for this piece of property. So I think it's, to your point, I think I don't think they have a plan for it. They just want to kind of, now that they're looking at it, they want to kind of have the most, do it industrial, so they have the most options to go on to the piece of property.
And I think, Mike, you
misspoke there at all.
Yep, I just wanted to echo that. Years ago, we actually went into the state. We went into Boston and met with the state about this land because we saw it sitting by the highway and not generating any tax revenue for the town, and worked with our state reps and MassDOT to try and get this land put on the market, and that's how this started. And the zoning is exactly what is across the street for the Blue Star Park.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Zach?
Just a question. Wasn't this lot originally looked at to build the municipal complex on, and what was the history of that?
Mr. Chairman?
Mike?
It was one of the sites that was looked at, and it was decided that for the development that we were looking to do, it was just cost prohibitive to run a roadway all the way in there for the two buildings. So the architect took this off the list because of the cost just to get in there to develop it.
Any other questions from the Finance Committee?
Hey, Steve.
Is that Bill?
Yep. Perhaps a very silly question. I'm not 100% visual given the maps I'm seeing. So with all the work on that section of 123 and 495, I'm just trying to visualize with the new lights at Blue Star. So there's going to be a set of lights, and then you take a right into Blue Star. At that light, am I going to be able to take a left and go into this parcel?
So the lights at Leonard Street, we had this in mind when the project was being developed, so that the roadway coming out of this project will line up with Leonard Street and be able to utilize the same light.
So that's 78?
Correct.
Is that part of this property, or someone would have to buy that to get into it?
78 is part of another article that we have to have the town authorize. It's a strange piece of land. It's got a lot of title issues that the town took at some point, and the article would authorize the town to give the Board of Selectmen the authorization to dispose of the property. So that would be a parcel that we would look to sell.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mike, I'm sorry, before we go on, can you explain that the selling process it's not really a sale? Can you just provide some insight there?
Sure. Like I said, there are title problems with that property. It's a small piece of land. It's 40 feet wide by, I forget how many, what the length of it is right now. I don't know if Paul knows. But so what we don't believe we're going to get a lot of money for that because of the title issues. It would cost us more to straighten out the title than it would be to just dispose of it. So that would all be part of negotiations, whether we sell it for $1 or whatever we do to whoever's willing to get the title straightened out.
And if I could just add, Chair, that if we're able, down the road whenever there's a proposal to develop the DOT property, Leonard Street could go right through parcel 78, but one of the benefits is it would then give us access to the town-owned property that we were just discussing. I mean, that was another impediment, is there's no access. That lot, the town-owned lot, doesn't connect to a public way or street. So that would give us access. We would have to make sure that when our development goes through, that we would insist on extending Leonard Street to connect to the town parcel.
And and Mr. Chairman, if I could, if you could just zoom in again out front, where that exit is out of Dunkin' Donuts. Hopefully we could work something out where they could close that off and then they could come out onto parcel 78 at the light and make it a lot safer coming out of that Dunkin' Donuts.
Does anyone else on the Finance Committee have questions at this point?
Mr. Chairman?
Is that Amy?
It's Bonnie.
Bonnie, go ahead, Bonnie.
Yeah, I was wondering what happens to the salt shed? Where is it relocated to?
We don't have an exact location where it's going to be relocated at this point in time. It's likely, Bonnie, to stay on site. So I noted earlier, although this kind of discussion right now is that so here's the water protection district, the purple. And if the portion of the site is not in the, inside of that district. So the natural location would be to relocate the salt uses outside of the protection districts. You know, so as a roadway gets put in, we have to maintain access to it as well. So key to anything that's going to happen here is an economic package, lack of a better description, because so if the property were, just by way of example, $10, you know, it's going to cost, you know, some dollar amount to relocate those salt sheds, whether they're on site, off site, or someplace else. It can't be $11 because MassDOT doesn't have an extra dollar, you know, to spend, so to speak. It can't be $10 either because, you know, MassDOT can't necessarily, you know, give up its opportunity to own 37 acres that's flexible for future operations and break even, you know, and just kind of relocate it. So there has to be, you know, an acceptable package, lack of a better description, for MassDOT as they relocate, whether it's on site or someplace else. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Jack, I'm not sure if the select board has any questions.
Not either. Let's ask them. You're an awfully quiet bunch tonight, Steve. I think everyone's getting sleepy.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. And please, I apologize for my ignorance if this has already been talked about. So this is for we're voting on an Article 18, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, could we bring that article up? I know we're looking at like the zoning, and I understand all of that. I think we've talked about this at or you guys have talked about it at one of the other select board meetings. But so I just want to understand the article more. If someone could just briefly explain that.
Question. Mike, can you pull that back up? And you are muted, Mike, by the way. You can see you muttering over there. Does anyone have the Jeopardy theme queued up? You do. So Mike, do you want to talk through this for Christine's benefit? He's still muted?
Muted, Mike, sorry.
Yep. So this article would rezone this property from residential 80 to industrial, and the parcels to be rezoned are listed below.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. I just needed a brief refresher on that. Thank you.
And Jack, it's Renee.
Hi, Renee.
I don't have a question on this, but wanted to add that the EDC had seen this presentation what feels like maybe 2 months ago, and it was supported from the EDC as well.
Excellent. Good context. Seeing no other questions, and I don't believe this is one that we have voted on yet, Chair would entertain a motion to approve Article 18 as presented.
So moved.
Point of information, I believe the planning board unanimously approved this as well.
That's correct.
Seconded.
All right, motion and a second. We'll go to the vote. Christine?
Yes.
Meg?
Yes.
Michael?
An enthusiastic yes, Jack.
What about an enthusiastic aye?
Aye, absolutely.
Okay.
And E.
Okay, thank you. Renee?
Yes.
I too am a yes. So that is unanimous. Thank you very much, guys. Steve?
Thank you very much.
When Mike too gives an enthusiastic okay on anything, it means more scrutiny from my perspective.
I mean, that's the science, Steve, so good job.
I will also entertain a motion from the Finance Committee on Article 18.
Mr. Chairman,
Amy?
I move that the Finance Committee recommend Article 18 as written.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for Article 18 as written. Any other conversation, discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. Amy?
Yes.
Peter?
Aye.
Paula?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
And I am also a yes. That's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Hey, and happy birthday, Peter Wiggins.
Yes.
Buddy.
Happy birthday, everyone!
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, guys.
you very
Thanks,
much.
Hey, Tom!
Mr. Chairman,
Michael?
first of all, I'd like to thank Frank Fournier for holding out. And the next two articles are Article 4 and 5. And Article 4, C. Deals with the water enterprise. And I know Frank is on and here to answer any questions I have.
I think the one lingering question is we need to make sure that the budget was actually updated. When we actually met, there was still placeholder items. Just want to confirm that this budget has been updated with the actual numbers.
It has.
Okay. Does anyone on the Finance Committee have any questions regarding the Article 4 water? Water. This is Water Department, correct?
Correct.
I'm not sure if that's Peter.
Yeah, Peter, you might want to mute yourself, my friend.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, hearing none. Jack?
All right, anything on our end? All right, hearing nothing. I know, well, Chair would entertain a motion to approve.
Hey, Jack, I just want a second to read it. I'm sorry, it was muted.
Okay.
The only thing I have to say is if you have a running toilet for a month or 2 months, it can cost you a lot of money. So everyone should check. Just saying.
It's a good public service announcement.
Yes. So I contributed a lot to this bill here.
I've had to replace 2 flapper valves in the last month in my house, so I can feel your pain.
So Mike Unit says, we're reading through this, or the select board is reading through this. When we vote on this, do we have to specify each of these 4 categories and then the amounts for our motion?
Your motion can be to recommend the water enterprise budget as presented would be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Amy appreciates that.
I'm all set, Jeff.
All right. So Chair would entertain a motion to approve Article 4 as written.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
All right, motion by Michael, second by Renee. We'll go to the roll. Christine?
Yes.
Meg?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
An enthusiastic one or a regular one?
Regular one.
Okay. Renee?
Frank.
Yes.
I too vote yes. Thank you.
Excellent. I will now entertain a motion from the Finance Committee for Article 4.
Mr. Chairman,
Amy?
I move that we recommend Article 4, the water enterprise budget as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve Article 4, the Water Enterprise Fund. Any other discussion, conversation? Okay, hearing none, I'll go to the vote. Amy?
Yes.
Peter?
Aye.
Paula?
Yes.
Yes?
Okay, Aaron?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
And I'm also a yes, that's unanimous.
Okay, the next article is Article 5, which is the sewer budget.
Does anyone have any conversation regarding Article 5 at this time? Okay, hearing none. Jack?
I'll open it up to select board. Hearing or seeing none?
Jack, I know, I had to go back to when we first talked about this. Can somebody refresh my memory? Why is the debt service so much higher?
That's why I'm looking up now, Renee.
Frank? Did we lose Frank?
I see him. I don't hear him though.
Said earlier he was having issues with his microphone. Because that wouldn't be the water treatment plant, because that is a water treatment plant and not a sewer. We have higher assessments from MFN.
Let me get to his budget on sewer and let me text him.
Is the debt service due to the increased borrowing for the sewer project on Main Street? Or have we not bonded that yet? Or will we bond that later this year when the project ends?
It was it went from 237 to 409.
Amy, I believe you're correct. Because the charges and expenditures would cover MFN costs, and the debt service would be mainly the increase because of the West Main Street sewer.
But wouldn't they have known that when they presented it the first time, Mike, or no?
Well, I'm not sure. I'd have to look back and see what was on when they presented the first time.
It was 237, 480.
Okay, that might be the area that changed. That when Frank said he had to check numbers. Because I know it was debt that was the issue that he had to review.
Mr. Chair, we can wait on that one to just for clarification from Frank on that. I'm not sure the other members feel, but do we need to do this one tonight?
Yeah, I'd certainly be comfortable waiting unless we can get Frank back on.
I mean, I'll ask him, but they don't have any other debt that they would have to cover, and I'm sure that's what it is.
I would agree. I'd like to get clarification before we vote on it, so.
Yeah, I just don't have that in my notes, Mike. I mean, that would have been something that I think he would have said, wouldn't it?
He has no mic, and he said debt service increase West Main Street project. He just texted me.
Alright. And how long roughly is that project being bonded for, Mike? Is that 20?
It probably 20 years, yes.
Are we done with that project?
No, they have to repave the road now.
I mean, but are we done digging and doing anything that's gonna come back for a fourth time for more money?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, please, Christine.
Again, just for my lack of knowledge for this, will that 409 go down eventually because the project, like Renee asked, is ended, or will that be constantly staying at 409 or above as things increase?
It would probably be staying more or less at 409 until it's paid off.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Michael, does that satisfactorily answer your question to a point where you're comfortable voting tonight, or do you prefer to talk to Frank?
No, I mean, it's right. The project is the project. I don't have to like that it went up, but I just don't understand why we wouldn't have seen that, right? I mean, that's a 200, give or take, right? It's a $180,000 jump out of the blue. I just don't understand in the budget why we wouldn't have seen that out of the gate. But yeah, I'm fine voting.
Understood. All right, seeing no other questions, Chair would entertain a motion to approve Article 5 as written.
Moved.
Seconded.
Okay, there's a motion by Renee and a second by Christine. We'll go to the vote. Christine?
Yes.
Meg?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Renee?
Yes.
And I too will vote yes.
Okay, now I will entertain a motion for Article 5 from the Finance Committee.
Mr. Chairman,
Amy,
I move that we recommend Article 5, the sewer enterprise budget, as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for Article 5, the Sewer Enterprise Fund, as written. Any other discussion, conversation? Hearing none, I'll go to the vote. Amy?
Yes.
Peter?
Aye.
Paula?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
I am also a yes. That's unanimous for Article 5.
And I think that would be it for tonight. And we could continue on Wednesday night with articles and budgets. And the building committee tonight agreed to be on the 21st meeting to talk about their article.
Okay. And we do have the public hearing set for the 26th, is it?
Yes.
Okay. Hearing nothing or having nothing right now, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn at the
Mr.
early
Chairman,
hour of 9:58.
one quick thing before we go.
Amy?
I promise it'll be quick. Could we possibly get the meeting invites for the rest of the budget season? Because I didn't know we had a meeting on the 21st.
Yep. I'll make sure Charlene does that for you.
Thank you.
Okay.
So if there's nothing else, seeing the lateness of the hour, I move that we adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Any conversation, discussion? Hearing none, I'll go to the vote. Amy?
Yes.
Peter?
Aye.
Paula?
Yes.
Bill?
Yes.
Aaron?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Bonnie?
Yes.
I am also a yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Hold on.
Jack.
Everybody slow their roll.
Ooh, I know we're all excited to get going to bed. All right. As someone just pointed out to me, on this momentous occasion, where for the first time in Norton's long and historic history, we have a majority of female members on the board, on the select board. So I just want to recognize that. This is a really cool thing to have happen. It sets a great example for my two kids, my two young girls. So
My two
congratulations
boys
to
as
all of
well, Mr. Conway.
That's true. Well, I've met your voice. I don't think anything inspires them other than video games and Legos. That said, and seeing the lateness of the hour, Chair would entertain a motion to adjourn this historic session of the Select Board / Super FunCom.
Second.
We have a motion from Renee and a second from Meg, and I'm calling those up because the FinCom secretary doesn't know our voices yet. But she will after this season. We'll go to the roll. Christine?
Yes.
Meg?
Yes.
Michael?
Aye.
Renee?
Yes.
And I, too, will give an enthusiastic aye. Have a great night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Peter.
Good night.
Good night. Recording stopped.